Discretion is advised.
Wait a minute, this is your boy Al Mugger. Welcome to a brand new show, the Comic Crusaders After Dark. We're presenting this episode early so you guys get a gist of what we're going to be talking about. Definitely a much more adult show, much more serious talk, getting into some crazy topics, especially about the independent comic book industry. So let me introduce the man himself that put together one of the dopest PowerPoints today for us to go through and learn some things. The one, the only, the Dr. G. Baisden, baby. How you doing?
What up? Good to see you, Al.
All right. And let me introduce a fellow independent creator, a good friend of the Comic Crusaders that wanted to join in. He's going to be observing and asking questions himself. The one, the only, Mr. Mer Cartagena.
Hey. Good night, good evening, good afternoon, wherever in the world you are. Thank you for having me over, Al. Great to meet you, Dr. Baisden.
Good to see you, Al. Good to see you, Mel.
Yeah, I'm happy. Here we go, folks. We're about to get into some stuff here. We're about to learn. I mean, this show, again, is going to have a heavy focus on creator rights, independent comic books. I mean, the industry in itself, get into some real serious talk, hopefully some deep level talk. Hopefully people can learn something out of this. And my brother, let me put you in that number one place. Let me start. We're going to have to start because we're a little bit late. Please excuse us, time zones and intro making and all that good stuff, having some fun, especially talking in the green room. So we got a little carried away, but we are here. So thank you guys. Let me go ahead and bring this in. If you see me skip away, that don't you worry. I ain't going nowhere. It's just, wonderful spectrum and the shitty internet. All right. All right, Dr. G, the floor is yours, baby.
Oh, where do we start? Well, comic books are all about the little guy or the team getting together to beat on the big guy who's trying to destroy everything or consume everything. Classic example of that would be Thanos, right? Listen, for the good of all, I'm going to get rid of half of everything and own the rest. Well, isn't it strange that that's kind of how the comic book industry is structured?
Yes.
Oh, man, you're telling me they can control everything with a snap, Dr. G?
Well, traditionally organized. We're in a golden age right now, and I don't mean that we're in a golden age of character creation per se, but we're on the cusp of a golden age of creators, because we start to have some of the means of distribution, which is really how the system kind of controls things. And there's good in that, and we're going to talk about some of the good that comes out of that. But there's also some questions, and I think the issues are really emphasized. And I really appreciate, Al, you wanting to do this program, because when the Screen Actors Guild strike started and the Writers Guild strike started, I reached out to my brother Al and I said, this is what we've been leading up to, because these are people saying, wait a minute, if it's all about content, and boy, do we live in a content-driven culture. Who owns the content? Who's in control of the content? What's the content? Where's it coming from? Where does it originate? And of course, where it originates is, in the noodles of the three of us guys today. And we're going to kind of spell you in on, our values and where that's coming from. So just, I didn't really think about it when I sent this to you, but now I'm looking at it. I'm like, there it is, man. Second row. The more you hit him, the bigger he grows. And so I want to talk to you today. We're going to go back to the golden age and talk a little bit about how we got where we are, what parts of that are still sort of hanging over our heads, and how we've been able or are starting to break through, so that not only do our creations get seen, but that we still have a little bit of, if not exactly control, hopefully some control, we get to have some of the proceeds from that.
I mean, that should be a given, though. That's what kind of, I feel sometimes is a disgusting behavior. Okay, I understand we're far this, that, but at the end of the day, if you're making, crazy bank, look back at the history. Well, this person contributed. Let me out of the goodness of my heart. But again, this is why corporations are soulless entities, right? They have no empathy for or caring for those that actually made them or have them help reach them the plateaus that they're at today. Disgusting.
What's that about Thanos? Now the thing is, I'm not a Stalinist. I'm not about the Soviet Union way of organizing or the fascistic way of organizing labor. The thing about a corporation is it is an extremely efficient way to aggregate resources and control them. The problem with the corporation is it's single-minded and psychopathic. Yeah?
Yes.
You think I'm just kidding you? Well, we're going to talk about that tonight. The many faces of evil. Pick your brand and let's talk about it.
They're like the faces of death comic style.
My least favorite thing to talk about is myself, though. But if you'll move on to the next image, I'm just going to give you a quick shot of my cred so you know where I'm coming from on this. I started out my career, if you show the next slide out, I started out my career as an investigative journalist. I worked for many newspapers and magazines. You want to advance it?
Yeah, I see it. I moved it already. Maybe it's
I'm looking at the wrong place. Let me advance it on my own screen. I started my career as an investigative journalist. I don't talk about it too much anymore because now I'm an archetypal psychologist doing counseling for people. But I won't get into the great story of how I ended up working at the Comics Journal, but my goal there was to be a trade magazine for the industry. And by virtue of that, we covered so many great stories, including when Rick Veitch was expelled from Swamp Thing for a story that he had scripted with approval, had drawn with approval, and then the attorneys. Did we talk about corporations and Thanos?
Oh,
the
really?
attorney said, "You can't do that. You can't do that." Rick Veitch is like,
do what? Wait a minute. Wait. I love me some gossip. What couldn't he do?
This is reaching back a bit, but this was a big story at the time, and we're going to talk about this again as we go on. But you remember that Alan Moore really made his fame in the American market as the writer for Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
And when he started to finish that up, he was trying to find who he was going to pass it off to. And Rick Veitch had been drawing it. So Rick Veitch is a great writer. So he said, "Rick, why don't you take it on?" And Rick did. Had a really good run on Swamp Thing. Really, we're talking about the classic run, the second classic run after Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson on Swamp Thing. So Rick, who has a pretty subversive mentality, came up with this idea that if Swamp Thing is really in touch with all of creation, would he not be able to be in touch with the crucifix on Gethsemane, on Golgotha? So when Christ is hanging on the cross, he thought it would be a perfect time for Swamp Thing to have a dialogue with, somebody who had something to say to humanity, right?
Yeah, he was there for that. That's actually pretty clever as an idea, as in a pure, abstract, intelligent way. It's really clever.
Yeah, it is.
Truly clever, right? And I like it because it's a crossroads. It's a crossroads culturally. It's a crossroads of comics getting into the discourse of more philosophical things. It's Swamp Thing kind of trying to find what is the humanity he lost by this ultimate expression of humanity. So the script was called Morning of the Magician. It was written, it was approved, it was penciled, and DC pulled the plug on it.
Wow. DC is afraid to do that because they did the same thing with the comic recently, The Second Coming, that Ahoy wound up picking up. Anything that has to do with religious themes, they sign it, they look at it, and then they say, no, it's a miracle. And I mean a pure miracle that they did Punk Rock Jesus, because that was Vertigo.
Are you kidding? Yeah, and the funny thing is, I think things are to some degree worse now, partly because of social media. We have a lot of people who are just irate about certain portrayals and they want to stop them cold. Back when Rick wrote that, we were Watchmen, V for Vendetta, Dark Knight, we were in a discourse about how these characters can speak to the culture. Today, you said it, Al, it's like a miracle we can get almost anything done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And there's only some very few ballsy publishers that will take a stance and say, no, we're going to, they said no, guess what? We'll say yes, let's do it. You know what? And Second Coming has become quite a hit for Ahoy Comics.
Well, think of Preacher and think of Lucifer. We're going to, that's a great statement, Al, because it speaks exactly to what we're going to talk about in terms of corporate ownership and control of creativity. So I went from the Comics Journal to Eclipse. where I got to fulfill a dream of mine. I will not go back to when I was 10 years old and discovered the original Captain Marvel. But believe me, when Eclipse offered me a job, they wanted me to work on their manga line, which was great. But I said, if you really want to make this worth my while and convince me to come, you have to give me Miracleman.
Oof. Oof.
So that's how I got to know, I got to know them through working for the Journal, the stories like I just described. But when I went to work for Eclipse, I got to work very closely with Neil Gaiman, Mark Buckingham, great time. And that turned into a phone call from Kevin Eastman, who was founding Tundra Publishing. Wow. So I don't want to spend time talking about all that. We could talk all day. Let's advance the slide and move on. That's just where I'm coming from.
Man, my old man, the king himself. That's a piece of beauty right there.
Kirby's Silver Surfer.
Oh. Yeah, I love that image. Hey, Mel, who owns the Silver Surfer?
Good question. I don't know. Not Kirby. I can say that, I guess, with confidence.
Definitely not Kirby.
Not the Kirby estate.
Yeah,
I'm going to say... what company produced that movie that had him on? On last? That was
Fox, right?
Fox or Sony. Well, the last Fantastic Four that had the second movie that had the Silver Surfer. Was it Disney or this is before Disney bought Marvel or?
Yeah.
Well, Marvel, when they were kind of going under in the mid '90s, after all the speculative frenzy, passed away, they started selling certain of their characters because they wanted to make movies, obviously, and they sold Fantastic Four, including the Silver Surfer, to I think it was Sony. Now I don't know if it was Fox. You'd have to tell me. I thought Fox was the X-Men.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yes,
and I might have that backwards. I didn't track it, but
you probably Disney just answered a question that I had also.
Yeah, Disney recently acquired Fox Studios from News Corporation, so they recaptured. And I have a graph of this. I didn't think of putting it in. So they have a graph where they recaptured many characters. Sony does still have an interest in Spider-Man, and the way the contracts are written, as long as they're producing Spider-Man, it's theirs. Now, the thing is, Marvel has been able to negotiate with them because it, of course, was very lucrative during the Avengers, the first and second phase of Marvel, to include Spider-Man in those movies. And that was a big coup. But they had to profit share with Sony because of the structured agreement. And it was a real trade-off. And I love the irony of Marvel not controlling the characters that they have wrested, and I'm going to use that word advisedly, that they have acquired from so many creative sources. And here it is. Is this Kirby's greatest creation? I don't know, but it is certainly one of his most iconic.
It is.
Would Stanley agree with you?
Stanley would say, well, me and Jack were one afternoon. We were discussing where to create a new character. And I was like, hey, wouldn't it be great if we had someone who could fly? Well, no, but I mean, someone who could fly and be philosophical, you know?
I have to agree with you on that score, but I will tell you, I think that was Stan going, Jack, what the hell is this? This looks like Jack Kirby to me. This looks like Jack Kirby has moved to California to, work on the animation and stuff, and he's looking out the window going, oh, there it is.
Yeah, he's on
I never made that connection that he actually was in California, and I guess maybe he liked surfing, but he didn't do it, so he figured take surfing and combine it with something very unrelated,
I'm telling you right now, he looked out the window when he was in Cali. He saw a glowing white boy. He goes, surfer, huh?
I think Jack Kirby was a mythologist, obviously. You can see that he read deeply in Aztec and Mayan mythology, but I think he also was looking, and we're going to talk about this. This is great that we're emphasizing Kirby, because I think he was like, what's the thing? What's the market? What are people wanting to see? What hasn't been addressed? And we'll get into that. So do you guys recognize this image? I don't want to spend a lot of time because I want to get to the meat of it, but do you recognize this guy?
Very rocketeerish.
I recognize the yellow. The big guy is Milton's. Oh my God, Milton's kind of his hero. I cannot. I was just looking at it the other night, and I cannot remember his name. But it looks like Milton Caniff's hero.
Awesome. Yeah, Pat Ryan from Terry and the Pirates.
Yes.
What?
I know. Thank you.
Ryan. Well, y'all
Some
putting me
people
on. There's some
consider
old stuff, man. Listen, just because I got gray hair, Greg, I ain't that old now.
Well, I am that old, Al. Actually, no. I'm a pop. I call myself a pop occultist. I'm interested in popular culture, stretching way back to when it became a mass thing, and that incorporates everything from Thelonious Monk and Duke Ellington to Thanos and Iron Man. The reason I put this here is because Milton Caniff was in a very interesting position in his days, right before the Second World War, during the Depression. If you wanted to do comics, which obviously he's a master, I think this image really captures that.
I mean, look at the women's faces. I mean, every woman looks different, beautiful.
And I don't know if you've read Tearing the Pirates, but there are so many strong female characters in there. Oh my gosh.
Amazing. Look at it. Look at it. I mean, if my man got a pipe like that, now I see where you got the inspiration from.
Yeah, it's funny because behind me, you can't really see it. I have a Church of the Subgenius poster, and there's a guy smoking a pipe, Bob Dobbs, right? It's a very iconic image. Can you see that back there?
Okay.
I can see a little bit. There's some glare in the bottom, but I can see the general, most of it. I can see it.
If you guys are familiar with the Search of the Subgenius, it's we're gonna have all kinds of Easter eggs in this, guys. So take notes. So anyway, Milt Caniff, the only way you could really do a comics back then, this is really before comic books even got really rolling, was to work for a syndicate who would distribute your strip to hundreds of newspapers. Now, right there, beautiful example of capitalist control. This isn't a political argument. We're just talking about the way things are run. Capitalist control, amalgamate resources and control distribution. So he, however, had done 2 strips before this, and he was popular enough and successful enough that when he decided he was going to step away from a strip that was called Dickie Dare, he wanted to do something of his own. Yeah, I know, right? And in fact, the syndicate reached out to him. It was the McClure Syndicate, I think, and he said to him, actually King Features, you really got a lot of newspapers subscribing to Dickie Dare. How would you like to do something bigger? And Caniff said to him, I will do it if I have artistic control. Now, he didn't own it. He still doesn't own it. King Features owns it. But he had creative control. So go ahead and advance it. Another guy who was in a less propitious place, this you may recognize from The Animal. This is George Harriman, the creator of Crazy Cat. Now, he did not own Crazy Cat.
I'm thinking that, hey, he looked like my pops. My pop, my pop still dressed like that too. Oh shit! Look at him.
Old school.
Yeah, a true gent. And he came up with Crazy Cat working on a different syndicated strip. It was called the Dingbat Family or the Family Upstairs. But people started responding to Crazy Cat. It's kind of like people responded to Popeye in the middle of a different strip. And someone said to him, you ought to emphasize that. But he didn't own it. However, he was dearly beloved by William Randolph Hearst.
Wait. What do you mean he didn't own it?
Didn't own it.
He created it, but what happened then? I mean,
exactly the thing. The syndicates, if you wanted to create, you had to have a way to distribute it. And the place to distribute it was in a newspaper. And the way to get broad distribution through hundreds of newspapers was through the syndicate. And the syndicate said, you draw it, sign here, we own it.
We own it.
But
and you get to work on it.
We're going to get you noticed.
You get to work on it until we feel that trouble, which is
for success.
We'll get into the mechanics of ownership because it's got a couple steps. But yeah, what Harriman wanted to do is he wanted to cartoon. And he had a sweet deal with William Randolph Hearst, who said, listen, George, I love it. Some of the newspapers don't run it. In fact, it's very hard. It was very hard to compile a complete Crazy Cat because some newspapers were like, what is this? But Hearst loved it. So he financed George Harriman for 40 years while he just did what he wanted to do. The only rub,
amazing,
didn't own it.
Wow.
Now that's part of the good and the bad because it was entirely his own creation. Nobody was telling him what to do with it. Nobody was telling him he couldn't do anything.
No.
But it wasn't his. And George Herman, the reason I put him particularly in here is he had that sweet creative deal that didn't include ownership. And when he passed away, Saturday morning cartoons, all kinds of merchandise. He's holding a piece of that merchandise.
That is some bullshit.
What was his?
There is a power.
What was his cut for that Crazy Cat doll?
Nothing, huh?
None.
The doll. He got one of the dolls.
He got the doll.
Smiles.
That's like
Wow.
you participate in a behind the scenes of a DVD and you get the DVD. You don't get actually royalties or anything. you get a copy of a DVD.
If you're lucky, you get an Oscar and some applause.
You know?
Hopefully, yeah. So we're going on a brief tangent about the guy who wrote Forrest Gump, about how it became not only one of the biggest hits of that, but the biggest hit of the movie of the year. And the studio who financed it declared bankruptcy, so they couldn't pay him. And I guess he was tied in a lawsuit for years and years to get money from them, because no, you can't say that. Like, no, right here, the numbers are here. Like, this movie was the biggest earner of 1994. Oh, here we go.
What a great point, Mel, because didn't Disney make billions of dollars on the Marvel movies?
Fuck yeah.
I imagine they still are, because people probably are now liking more everything done pre-Disney by now than what they're making now, because almost everything they're making is in the Disney platform. They're dialing back now
10 years.
Because people don't want the big. There's just, what the hell are you doing? I'm sorry, go ahead.
How is Disney having trouble now?
In a number of ways. For one, they started a fight with the state of Florida. They started getting into an argument with Ron DeSantis. The other one, I guess, I'm not going to blame anybody in particular, but let's just say over the past couple of decades, they've been infiltrated by certain elements that are doing things to the content, to use that word again, content. I don't like the word, but content. What used to be mythological, powerful figures are now content. That's a little bit cringe, because the creators, the people who are writing and doing these things, they're putting their issues, their personal issues right there, and it's kind of embarrassing to listen to, like, the dialogue and to watch these things. I'm like, you need to talk to someone.
We're going to talk about Disney, and we may get into what happened to Warner.
You need to talk to someone like you, Doctor.
I love that you mentioned corporate infiltration. So what are we looking at here? You guys know this one.
Calvin and Hobbes is just delightful. Just that line.
Now, Bill Watterson started out as an editorial.
The way, the color, it is. It takes you back to childhood to look at this.
It's masterful, and he was a master watercolorist. He started out as an editorial cartoonist, and he wanted to do a daily strip. Same situation. We're going to own it, draw it to your heart's content. However, because he had a little bit of clout, as Kniff did when he started Terry and the Pirates, Bill said, well, I'm going to go to a creators syndicate. They were called Andrews and McNeil, and that gave him just enough control of the strip where he was consulted in how it was merchandised and how it was exploited. So you don't see Calvin and Hobbes figurines, you don't see Calvin and Hobbes dolls, you don't see a lot of exploitation, because Watterson said, this is my vision, this is how I'm going to keep it pure, collect it, reprint it, etc., and give me my percentage.
Yep, give me my piece of my shit.
Was he able to say then, you're not going to create merch, you're not going to create figurines?
Yes.
And you're not going to create like stuff that starts with good intentions but tends to become like junk. It tends to become like commodified, like repetitive stuff.
You could say that it dilutes it. We're going to talk about Mickey Mouse in a minute. But I think what's beautiful about Watterson is that he had established so much creative control over the material that not only was he not told what he could and couldn't do, when he was done, he stopped and they couldn't hand it to another artist.
That is probably the best artistic victory right there. The fact that it started with me, it ends with me.
Yeah, Mel, we have a little delay, so I don't mean to talk over you, but the really good points you're raising is you were talking about mythology before we got on air about it being like a cohesive story. Well, Popeye has been continued for 90 years. Dick Tracy was taken over by other people. A lot, there's many strips that got taken over by other artists, and they did what they did. It's fine. But Calvin and Hobbes has a coherence to it, and it has a completeness to it because Bill Watterson was in control of it. And how he did it was when he went into the syndicate, he said, I'm going to bring something of value that I respect. I'm not in it for the money. I'm not in it for the exploitation. I'm in it for the art of it. And let me meet your commerce with my art. And Andrews and McNeil, luckily, was a company that could do that. Let's keep going. So
let me ask you, would you consider him one of those few American creators that have that manga reputation of, this is mine, started, ended with me? I mean, have there been any other American creators that have that similar manga story of the story starts with me and ends with me, as Mel said?
I think the two that come to mind for different reasons are Charles Schultz with Peanuts. He doesn't own it.
But did it end?
It ended when he died. He drew the last strip and died the next weekend. He did that for 50 years. The thing about Charles Schultz, though, is, as his contract to create Peanuts expired, the question was, is he going to continue, or are we going to hand it to another artist? Who was gonna take over Peanuts? Nobody. It was such a singular vision. He wrote, and he was clever about it. He wrote TV shows based on it, and he didn't own Peanuts. That was King Features Syndicate. In fact, they gave him the name Peanuts. He wanted to call it Good Old Charlie Brown. But he was such a singular vision and so crucial to it that not only did he renew his contract for the life of the work, but when he did it until he died. Now, the interesting thing about it is because, again, his artistic vision was so great, of course, they don't need to continue Peanuts. There's 50 years of Peanuts, but it's been reprinted with great honor. So here's the rub, Al. What are we looking at here?
Look at that Superman. Who the hell drew this? I haven't seen this Superman before.
Action Comics Under 97. This is from my coverless copy of that comic book.
Wait, this is yours? Look at this.
Amazing.
The artwork is so splendid, isn't it?
It is so different. I've never seen this. Who drew this?
This is a guy named...
I think that simplicity. Oh, no, go ahead. I'm sorry. No, I was going to say, I miss the simplicity of the 4-color plate thing. I find comics to be overproduced now. It's like they want to use all of the million colors available on Photoshop on every single panel now. It feels a bit like that now in current comics.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mel, because sometimes I look at these reprinted comics, and I'm really grateful to have them on nice paper and in a nice volume, but it's lost something in the translation. And I think Kirby was very good about that because he recognized the mode of production was part of the expression. And when you put it on Mando paper, and then you start monkeying with the color, you're turning into something else. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it looks gaudy.
Yeah.
So the reason I wanted to show this one, aside from the beautiful artwork, is you notice what it says in the upper right-hand corner.
Is that the King Features stamp? I can't see what it is, but it looks like a brand of some kind.
It says Superman by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster.
Oh, wow. Man.
Now, most of us, I mean, even me, and I'm 87 going on 95, we never saw that on a Superman comic book until after the movie came out. But when Superman got started, those are the guys who created it. Now, it's not Schuster. Everybody thinks of the publishing house Simon & Schuster. It's actually Shuster. Was the artist, and the reason I put the comic strips in front of this is because Siegel and Shuster wanted to be comic strip artists. They wanted to be a newspaper comic strip artist. Superman was created for the newspapers, right? And they couldn't sell it. Everyone was like, "This is crazy. This is too fanciful. No one would believe a man could fly. Come on."
Wow, amazing.
I think it was 5 or 6 years of that. And they were
we're still in some place like. We're still on that place. Some people just know.
So let me ask here, but what was it about the era that people were just, or rather that businesses were in the disbelief that people wanted fantasy?
I know, because when you think of the era, Wizard of Oz had been a big hit. Peter Pan, had been, right? But something about a man, an ostensibly human, running around in his acrobatic tights with his fancy cape, leaping over buildings. No one will buy that.
But a talking lion, yeah.
There's still
a man with no heart.
Well, and Superman really, I think, speaks to the heart not only of the industry of comics, but to the genre. There it is, man. The vigilante genre of superheroes coming in and helping people. Now, this is all from this. The next couple ones are from the same issue, because vigilante.
Again, hey, folks, before you go on, I want people to know this is out of the personal collection of Dr. G. I mean, these are not Google pictures, my friends. I mean, we're seeing some legit shit from the collection of Dr. G. I'm very happy here. I'm geeking.
And by the way, that's one of my
I can imagine when he was little and getting ideas for Sin City from images like this one from Vigilante. It feels like that. If you were to strip this into black and white, high contrast, it almost feels like a Sin City panel.
Oh, you should see this in the original black and white. This is Mort Meskin, one of the great Golden Age artists who's not remembered anymore because he didn't really make it into the Silver Age. But I will tell you this character is still going strong, right? They put him on a motorcycle. They've done put a big V on his chest. But who owns Vigilante?
I mean, is the name public domain by now that you could kind of transform into anything?
The name is
comics.
That is a crucial point, and I'm gonna hold on that. We'll come back to it. That's a crucial point because what happened with Superman is those two high school boys went up to DC Comics and they said, well, actually Sheldon Mayer saw it and said, we can use this for our new title, Action Comics. It's perfect. And they said to the boys, we'll hire you to draw this, and here's your $200 bonus for the rights.
Oh my God. And that time $200 was like fucking $2,000.
Remember, you guys are fans of I'm sorry, go ahead. I was going to ask, have you guys fans of Harlan Ellison? I keep talking over you. My apologies.
Yeah, Harlan Ellison. There's stories I can tell you there.
Oh wow, you met him.
I didn't meet him. I worked for the Comics Journal, and he was an ally of the Comics Journal for many years. So let me just say about this: if you just go back one out, because it'd be interesting to go back and look at the Superman again, or two. So these guys had hit it big, right? And we're talking about creators' rights here. This is why we're talking about this. And this goes all the way back to the beginning of the industry, where there were people who had printing presses that needed to run. They started reprinting newspaper strips. Then they needed new material. Here are these two high school boys going, my gosh, our dreams are going to come true. They hit it big, fellas. They signed a contract to produce their story. It was a years-long contract. Joe Shuster had to get a studio of guys together to help him draw it, and you see some of the result here. And but they didn't own it. It wasn't theirs anymore. And as soon as they said, hey, wait a minute, aren't you guys about to produce like a Superman cartoon? Y'all have seen the Fleischer Superman cartoons, right?
I love that, of course.
There was negotiation to put it into a Republic serial. Captain Marvel beat them to the punch. They're like, well, wait a minute. We're drawing the strip and we're getting paid to write and draw the strip, and that's cool. And of course, we get to see we got issues of the comic book. Thank you very much. But how about some $100,000s for the fact that you're exploiting this on peanut butter and shoes and toys and movies? And they're like, here, light my cigar, Joe.
Yeah, man. I mean, even the first Stay Freeze was Superman branded because they would absorb so much, you know?
So if you keep going again, we'll see the Vigilante, another character in Action Comics, and these guys are like, let's do it. Let's do it. They're just happy to have the job. It's the Depression. They're going to get their page rate, and then that's it. Next one is a very special example. Do you know this character?
Well, as far as I know, that's Zatanna's daddy.
You got it.
Wow.
How does that work? Who owns Zatanna?
Yeah, the fact that it has a generation too. Like it's actually Zatanna, the daughter, and the father.
I'll pick
How does that work?
That's a derivative character, right? Well,
and it's almost like indentured slavery too, because she's not free either.
And if you know the origin of Zatanna, there's a great series of stories where Batman helps her find her father. And boy, you nailed it, Mel. So here's the thing. This artist creates Zatara, the master magician. The guy never even thought of Zatanna, wasn't even crossed his mind. He made it through the Golden Age. I'm sorry that I'm not remembering the artist, but he made it through the Golden Age and he disappeared, right? I mean, that was it. Of course, Zatara itself is a little bit of a ripoff of Mandrake the Magician.
A little bit. I love you being so kind, Dr. J.
Get on steel, fellas. Mandrake, who was created by the same guy who created the Phantom. Now there it is again. Here's a creator who has his fingers on the pulse of what might be popular. He's got the Phantom going. He's got Mandrake the Magician going. Both very popular strips, and he did them for years. Doesn't own them. Phantom is still going on, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yes, yeah.
So we'll get into the question of public domain versus ownership in a second. But so Zatara is owned by DC Comics. And after the Golden Age ends, they're trying to find characters to revamp. Zatara's kind of old hat, no joke intended. Hey, but what if we do a derivative character and we'll call her Zatanna, yeah. And she's still going strong. Superboy is a derivative character.
Oh, absolutely.
And we'll get into that too, because ironically, the person who created Superboy was Joe Siegel coming back to DC, and he was able to keep a piece of that. So let's keep going.
Wait. So
I know that's a story that no one knows about.
Yeah. Well, it was a derivative character, but he created it. So he had provisos when he created where he said to them, you don't own that outright. And we're going to talk about why that's the case versus work made for hire, which I'm sure you've heard of, and self-creator own.
Yes.
So why does this cover to me exemplifies why does a corporation work so well?
Wait a minute. You're giving me a heart attack. You got this shit in your fucking collection? Yo, Mel, look at this. Yo,
I was just thinking, wow, I think you can finance pretty much paying off your house with some parts of your collection.
Damn, son, this is beautiful.
Oh boy, don't get me started about that, because I have had offers on stuff and I'm like,
yeah,
number 38, 15 cents. Wow.
Say that here. Yeah. You know what? Let me just say this: public service announcement, PSA. Almega says, do not ever go to a fucking comic shop or a dealer. They will rip you off. They will give you 1/10 of what it was worth. Don't you listen? Go to your eBays. Go deal with private people that actually want this stuff. You know what I mean?
I'm not gonna add to that except to say, right, straight up. And I can say that to you from some strong experience. It blows my mind.
I hear you. This is beautiful. Look at this book. Like, I wish I could afford some. I wish I could say,
yeah.
Can I offer you this much? I would find it disrespectful for me to try and offer you something because I can't afford this book, but it's so beautiful.
Yeah, and I don't think it's worth sending to CGC, although it probably is.
Fuck CGC. I'm not one of those either. I want to read my books. I want to smell the ink. Fucking casing books. That's bullshit too. Fuck out of here.
We'll get into this some other time, Al, but when I was working at the Comics Journal, I'm a huge Captain Marvel fan, and I happened to find a professor in Canada who was a comicologist. He was teaching courses in sequential art, and he was getting rid of his Captain Marvels.
What year?
Captain Marvel Jr., Wiz Comics, Master Comics, Wow Comics. Oh, yeah. Well, I don't have I guess I do have stacks of that stuff.
Holy shit. Look at this guy showing off.
They were what I'm saying is he was getting rid of them because they were like reading copies, and I didn't want to slab them. I wanted to read them.
Absolutely.
So I was lucky to find him, and I was able to. So here you go. This is what a corporation does: is it takes two different properties and it puts them together to expand the audience for both. Because who created Batman?
Oh, Bill Finger. I mean,
I want to say Bob Kane, but even that has its own little like backstory. I saw a video very recently by someone who talks about that, about how Bob Kane was like everybody hated that guy for a number of reasons relating to ownership of that character.
Mel, if you watch the documentary, you will absolutely lose respect for this man. Not for nothing. I mean,
I kind of did, and this is like a short 25-minute video that I saw, like how they talked about him, how he was, how he behaved towards people.
Watch the doco.
Next image.
Oh my God!
And there you go.
Man.
So Bob Kane. Now this is a very Mel. I love that you hit on that. Now I love that you hit on that. Bob Kane was a Bigfoot cartoonist, and he saw Superman and went, "Oh boy, all right." Here's an opportunity. I think he was 17 or 19. And he went to DC and he says, I've got the idea for you. Now, originally he was going to call it Birdman, but he knew this guy named Bill Finger, who was a staff writer for DC. And Bill said, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. So a lot of what we think of as Batman came from Bill Finger, but he was working for hire for Bob Kane, who said, thank you very much. Here's $50.
Understood.
Went to DC. Now here's the trick. Bob went to DC, and now the story kind of cuts both ways. The first version is that he signed a contract, went back home, and his dad said, "You did what?" The second version, which may be the first version, but I think Bob probably did sign that contract. But the story is that Bob took his dad to DC, and his dad said, "Listen, you're going to treat my boy right. He was too young to sign a contract at 19. I'm willing to sign it for him, but this is what you're going to do for him." Big deal. You ready for this big deal? We want 10% of Batman in perpetuity.
10, but that's a lot.
10%.
Wow.
That's crazy. In perpetuity.
Yeah.
So I mean, all right. So I gotta ask here, because copyright law. His rendition of Superman, or of Batman, or Batman in general.
Now look at this cover. Is this a beautiful cover or what?
It's fantastic. It's
fucking gorgeous.
Amazing. It's gorgeous. Yeah, like he said, gorgeous. It's just delightful. Amazing.
Jerry Robinson. And so with his 10% and his maybe not quite up to par artistic talent, Bob Kane started a studio. He started a stable. Jerry Robinson worked for him. Bill Finger worked for him. He had a few people working for him. And Jerry Robinson's the guy who came up with, said to him, how about this, the Joker? Bob Kane signed his name to it. You don't see his signature on this cover because Bob Kane couldn't quite put his name on it, maybe. Jerry Robinson drew that. And there is that madcap menace that we're still talking about today. What's his name?
The Joker.
Next slide.
Oh man, I had that whole run for the 70s. I had to sell it.
Are you kidding me? Boy, I wish I still owned this one. I mean, I owned the whole run.
Me too.
When Bob Kane expired, they thought that they could start doing, DC decided that they could start doing subsidiary uses of the character. Joker had never been in a comic book of his own before, but he was a hot property, partly because of the show, but also isn't he Batman's biggest nemesis?
Yeah.
Yes.
How do you secure the right in the character, especially with, like, if you go back, that cover is copyrighted now because DC has reprinted it so many times. So what's a copyright? It is, a lot of people put a W in it because they think it's about writing the character. No, it's a right to copy the material you've created, the right to copy the material. So we're going to draw Superman. You're going to pay me to draw Superman, and I'm going to give you my pages, and I'm going to give you the right to copy them in 1 million comic books. And DC says, that's fantastic. Thank you very much. And we own everything, because not only did we print the book, which is exerting copyright, we've paid you for the pages you drew. We paid you to draw that. Here, if you want to get paid, sign the back of the check, and the back of the check, and we're about to get into Kirby with this, says that you assign all rights to copy this material.
What? Wait. So you're telling me every check
in the classic DC
was like a mini contract?
Wait, I'm sorry. So
now we're in a stage now where creators are negotiating contracts, and we're going to get there. But this has been the practice of the industry for 70 years.
This is why I brought Harlan Ellison, because back in the day he wrote a long piece about that, and he actually mentioned that about how every check was stamped with that giving up the rights. So essentially, every check was like a contract, was a mini contract.
Insane.
So, go back for just a second now. So how else do you hold on to a character besides having a copyright in the material? Now remember, gentlemen, a copyright expires. A copyright.
Well, what's the law on expiration of a copyright? What's the American copyright law for expiration?
Well, the copyright law now, and it's changed, is basically that for 75 to 95 years after the death of the artist, the copyright holds. Okay. So Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster's family have been able to exert some of their interest in the character on the basis of that. But this is why I put this book right next to the Golden Age book, because what you see here is a really fun portrayal of the Joker in his own book for the first time. What else is it? It's a registration of the name The Joker for publishing.
Okay. It is fascinating to get into that. Like, you as a kid, you're like, oh man, like the Joker, my own comic. As an adult, you're seeing through the prism of an adult. You're seeing all the shenanigans the corporations get into to hold on to copyright. It's like,
one way they hold into copyright is by reprinting, and I have some examples down below. But how they hold the character is trademark.
And use it.
Oh, and have to use it. If you don't use it, it expires, and we're going to talk about that as well.
Yeah, there's terms and uses. I know that because it's related to business. When you trademark, if you don't, you got to put your shit on letterhead, etc., etc., and you have to have usage within these 10 years of time. Because if you're not showing no usage, your shit is fucked, baby.
What do they call it now? Branding, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So here's a great example of that. Shazam!
Wepa!
Oh, wait a minute.
We didn't transform, Greg. What happened?
Isn't that a music app?
Yo, bro, I thought you were going to transform. What happened? I thought you were going to get Diesel.
Yeah, which way did I go? So this is DC securing their trademark or asserting their trademark in the Joker.
Asserting, yes.
So here's an interesting example of that. You ever heard of the character Elastigirl?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Where does she come from?
Well, I thought she was a DC Legion character, no?
Yeah, but isn't she one of the Incredibles?
Oh shit! True.
So when Pixar came up with when Brad Bird came up with that and took it to Pixar and they developed it, and of course Pixar's owned by Disney, who owns Marvel. Wait a minute, we can't call her Rubber Girl, Plastic Girl, Fantastic Girl, Elastic Girl. They had to get permission from DC to use that name.
Interesting.
Now here's the worst part. DC doesn't really own a trademark in Elastigirl. They've never done a book. They've never done a comic book where she was the star. She's merely a character in the Legion. However, can you go buy an Elastigirl toy?
No.
T-shirt, shoes. Oh, yeah, all over the place.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, from the Pixar version, absolutely.
So who owns the trademark in Elastigirl? Just bake on that.
All right. I mean, well, you know what? I can't even answer that shit. That shit is a complicated fucking question. Because now you got DC, but then you got Pixar, two separate entities. I mean, is it really the same character? Yes, no, but I mean, does the other get money for the uses of the other? You know what I mean?
Is it a license or is it simply permissions? Because it's not fair use.
Well, you and I can't wait a minute. Is there a monetary difference between the license and permission?
Sure. permissions can theoretically just be granted.
And that means free.
Written permission.
It doesn't have to mean free. I could say to you, you have my permission to use it. What are you going to pay me? Which is what most of us are going to say, right?
Okay, of course. That's what Pat Mills told me.
Yeah.
You know, there's a thing in the United States under the First Amendment called the Fair Use Doctrine. So I could write a book about Elastigirl, and I could write her history. I could talk about this question that we're in, and I can portray her all I want because it's a journalistic fair use for the sake of public information. But I cannot exploit the character with T-shirts and merchandising because I don't own the character.
All right, so outside of the book, you can't fuck with the character. Outside of the book and the explorative journey of a character.
Yeah, they can hire you to write the character because why? They own the character.
They own the character.
Now, how do they own that character? They didn't create the Legion of Superheroes is phenomenal. How many Legionnaires are there?
I mean, listen, if you want an
One person
IP
did not
fucking
create all
farm,
that. Say
if
again?
you want an IP farm, there is no greater IP farm than the Legion of Superheroes.
But who created it?
Who is indeed? You educate me there. That's
Jim Shooter, because didn't Jim Shooter write it for 5 years when he was a teenager?
So he's a creator in it, but it existed prior to him.
That's right.
He elaborated upon it and expanded upon the universe.
He made it popular.
Like Layton did with Iron Man. Like, he has a sign that I got offended by that he says creator of Iron Man. No, you're not a creator of Iron Man, but you are one of the creators of different versions of Iron Man. I would believe that, but to label, listen, I mean, again, I'm no host bar show, folks. I saw this in the sign. He said, creator of Iron Man. I got upset. He is not the creator of Iron Man. Stop it.
He was a writer of Iron Man for a time, maybe.
And a creative force behind changes in the suit, sure. But not
and
a
perhaps
creator.
a contributor to Iron
Yes.
Man.
A creative contributor, yes. But not the creator. I mean, don't put that shit on your banner, bro. That shit is, come on, bro. Stop lying.
Well, I just said Shazam. Did it happen again?
And I guess when the original creators are dead too, maybe people get a little loose with what contribution means.
Very much so.
Fuck yeah, bro.
Yeah, so I mean, we can go down the list with this. We're not really getting ahead of ourselves because this is the point, is to talk about this. Wolverine. Who created Wolverine? Who created Alpha Flight? Who created Herbie the Robot when they couldn't use the Human Torch in the Fantastic Four cartoon?
How crazy is that? Dude, they couldn't use an official member of the team. How
now, here's the thing.
Is that due to copyright? I mean, laws are fucking insane.
This is all going to culminate in, you guessed it, gentlemen, Alan Moore. But let's keep going.
All right.
Where are we at?
We're at the Rainbow Creature. Look at this guy.
Right. So here again, what the hell?
That might be seen as progressive now, that creature.
Right?
Somebody will take that character and write from the point of view of the creature as a misunderstood being.
I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have any copies of Batman 134 because they've all been burned in Florida and Texas.
Oh, shit.
Oh.
Wepa!
That's a nice copy, right?
Right, you know?
It's pristine. It looks great.
I mean, you look at it. This man got this in his collection. This looks legit.
It has a date stamp on it. Keep going, because we're gonna just do a couple one. Let's do the next one.
Oh,
yeah. See, now who's that? That's whose name is on that? Nobody's name is on that except really down. That's Bob Kane's creation. This was done in 1967 to promote Batman. We're about to show you why. Carmen Infantino drew that.
Oh wow!
Yeah, you know what, Greg? In New York, I was at a Marco Bernaro show in New York. I was with my buddy 13 Crusader, and we're walking down an aisle, and all of a sudden I was talking to myself. I'm like, what happened? I look back, it's my boy online. He goes, do you know who that is? And when I look, this is right before Carmine passed. And he got a signature of Carmine. I mean, a legend. I mean, no one's gonna draw Batman as iconically as he did. I'm sorry. I mean, look at the beauty of this fucking image.
Yeah, that's a beautiful image. And so this is merchandise. This was a poster that was given out because Batman in the 60s was really hot. Bob Kane had nothing to do with this, but I tell you what he did get. 10% of the poster.
Motherfucker.
Now, a like image in the same era of Superman, the only person who got any money from that, aside from the artist who got paid to draw it,
was DC.
DC. That's right. Keep going. What's next?
Disgusting. Oh my God! Look at this.
Oh yeah.
It's Neil Adams, right?
You have to forgive me, Al, because I had to throw a couple pieces of candy in here. This is also Infantino, as inked by Joe Giella. But I think this is the first appearance of the Scarecrow.
Cool. This is awesome.
Who created the Scarecrow?
Infantino. If you did this cover, shit.
Well, he drew him. So that's a great point. Infantino, on some creative level, has a proprietary right in the what do they say in the copyright? The distinctive likeness of the character.
Yeah, the look, that aesthetic, man. I mean,
but guess what, boys?
What?
He drew this cover. He might have gotten well paid for that cover. He might have gotten $600 for that cover.
And that's
he drew the insides, and he might have gotten a nice. Hey, he might have gotten $50 a page, maybe. And then what? To cash the check, he signed on the dotted line.
Yes.
And he said, the copyright in this material is yours. And of course, he couldn't probably until the copyright advanced, because there's a window to reclaim your right of copy. He couldn't use it himself because he doesn't own the trademark. Hold on. He doesn't own the trademark in the character.
Okay, wait a minute. So what is the window?
Very nice.
What about that?
I think it's we have to look it up because it shifts around. The trademark laws are very sketchy in the United States, but it's you have about a 35-year window. So after the assign, literally the sign, after you assign the copyright,
okay,
you have 35 years. I think it's between 35 and 40 years, and then you have a window where you can say, nope, I want it back.
Within that time.
The Siegel and Shuster, for some reason, Shuster's estate was sluggish on this, but the Siegel estate was right on top of it. So when the movie was coming out, they made a big public outcry.
Which movie?
The Superman movie, #1.
Christopher Reeve?
Yeah, we're talking about Superman here. Yeah, just the first one. When they first started grandly exploiting Superman on the big screen. Now, of course, there was the serial. Siegel and Shuster got no participation in that serial.
None.
No.
Disgusting.
In fact, by that time, they had started to raise objections, and they were dismissed from even drawing the character.
They were shown the door, essentially. Yeah.
What?
That's troublemakers.
Their own baby.
You said it, Mel. And can you imagine watching your character being published every month, being published in World's Finest, being published in Superman, being published in Jimmy Olsen, being published in Lois Lane, being published in Take Your Justice League, and they not only didn't get paid to draw it because they weren't drawing it. In fact, their studio went away and continued to work on it for DC, and they didn't get any proceeds from any of it.
You know what, Greg? What makes me feel just as a human being? Could you imagine that your peers, your friends, that see this everywhere, and like, how are you not getting paid? I mean, that constant discussion. That there's going to be a constant discussion between friends. Like,
there's nothing you can do from a legal standpoint.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Well, that's a great point, because at that time there wasn't. First of all, they didn't have the money to do it. You know, Joe Shuster was going blind, didn't have the money, couldn't buy groceries.
Wow.
I mean, look at that. Oh shit, yo, what? And like he said, look at the signature, Bob fucking Kane. Disgusting. But look, right there.
He made sure, you don't miss it. It's like bigger than Robin's head.
Yeah, big, son.
Yeah, really, right there. And you know what's really funny about that? At this point, I don't even think that's his signature.
Oh, he was somebody outside.
He was paying someone to.
part of the agreement.
Time
was
for
that
him
they
to.
would- That's part of the agreement that they put his name on it.
Oh
But
man.
that he didn't. He was living the high life. Why?
Yeah,
Next
no.
slide.
You know what though?
10%.
Listen though, if
10%.
you could buy a submarine for $7, I think you're doing real good back in the day.
God, I wonder if anybody still has one of those.
Suck.
There it is, Mel. 10%. We're not
10%
talking
of
about funny books anymore, brothers.
10% for that.
Next one. 10% for
Hey,
that.
Adam, baby, legend.
One more.
This is the Duff.
We're just going through
Oh
these
wow.
books. And you see what he's wearing, don't you?
Yeah, man.
Yes.
Oh, that was his personal one. Don't you wish you had one of those?
Yo, absolutely. Yo, bro.
Because
what?
Batarangs, Batmobiles, Bat masks, Bat Halloween costumes go on and on and on. Siegel and Shuster are blind and well, Siegel had an interesting arrangement with DC, but they don't have any money, no proceeds. Meanwhile, Bob Kane, I'll light your cigar because you're giving me 10%.
Oh shit. Yeah. You're making me so angry, but you're making me
It does. It makes you angry to listen to this.
Are you
And
feeling educated though? Because when you create your guy, Humongo Man, whatever, what are you gonna say when someone says to you, "I'm gonna print that for you. We're gonna do big things."
oh wow! I guess we need to. I need to talk to you. I guess before I sign anything.
Yo, Mel,
Depends
wait a
on what
minute.
you want.
I don't know if anyone's been watching the new Superman cartoon, My Adventures with Superman. Now, this picture right here, this is classic Metroplex. Have you seen the desecration of this character of the new animated series? I'm like, what in the fuck is this?
I have not seen the newer version. I don't know what he looks like currently.
I don't know. So who's getting paid for that? Because it's definitely not this iteration.
By the
Chances-
way, can you tell who drew that?
So who drew that?
John Byrne.
Oh, Byrne. Hey.
Now here's my question for you:
Wow.
Who created Mr. Mixoplex?
But I mean, he's an
No
old
idea.
school character.
Who created Mr. Mixiez Pitalik?
I mean, he's an old school character, but going back to the day. But unfortunately, back in the day, they didn't really list creator credits
Why didn't they do that, Al?
because they want to keep the money. You know, who cares? We did it.
Because everybody was working for higher feeling privilege to work on Superman. Oh my God! You draw Superman? Wow! Do they pay you well? They pay me pretty well. So you get a piece of the T-shirt? Oh well, no.
No.
Nah, you know what I'm saying though is like
Flat rate, page rate. Yeah.
that is fucked up. Back in the day, you don't want to put these names. Again, really following Black's law, corporation was the human, so that corporation was the creator.
Yeah. Essentially, that's it. Yeah. Like it's the
whole
logo of the corporation is what you saw. You had to flip a few pages in to see the actual creators and tiny spaces too.
A holding company. Oof. We're going to exploit the character for you and you and you and you and you and you and you. And we're going to give you, it's going to be a big deal. The question is, Bob Kane asked for 10%. So why does DC emphasize Batman to the ends of the earth as their do-all, be-all, everywhere you can look character?
4 copies a fucking week of a different book with Batman. Like, I mean, talk about over fucking printing of a character. My God.
Isn't Superman the great character? Why do they not exploit Superman the way they exploit Batman?
Because unfortunately, people don't know how to write Superman nowadays. And people feel that he is too omnipotent. You can't write him right. I mean, no. It is the talent that wants to put a message that doesn't apply to the character that fucks him up. You know what I mean? How about write something? Listen, he is an easy character to write, honest to God. You could do so many amazing stories, but you guys got to put your fucking political agendas behind shit sometimes, and that what fucks up the character. Just my opinion, folks.
Hey, Al, bless your heart.
It's the thing, yeah. It's the subversion of the characters.
That's your Humongo Man. Go for it. Here's the thing. DC owns 90% of Batman.
90. Yeah, just 90. And
Outright,
they need to get
in writing. Superman has got all these pieces. What happens when the copyright expires when the work for hire agreement expires on Mr. Mxyzptlk? Well, Mort Weisinger's dead now. No one's going to claim him. DC owns him, but they don't. The Superboy's a difficult property for them. Supergirl's a difficult property for them because they're derivative characters, and they never went to the creators and said, "We're going to do this." They said, "We own it. There's nothing you can do." Well, that's not necessarily the case anymore, even if it was at the time. Who are you looking at now?
That's beautiful.
Bizarro.
Who created that?
And I'm noticing also, is this a Mxyzptlk here? This is the current version of Mxyzptlk?
No, well, I don't know if this is anything current.
Bizarro version of him.
But this is this is an amazing. Bizarro is currently used even in the CW verse now.
Now, every character in the world of Superman, they had their Bizarro version, which probably goes to what you mentioned about copyright. By creating all these alternative Bizarro version of the characters, extends your copyright notice then, huh?
It does in terms of derivative characters, but here's the funny thing about Bizarro. Mort Weisinger was the editor of the Superman titles. He wasn't a work for hire creating things. He was an employee of DC Comics. So
you need that, I guess. You're getting your blood pressure up.
So under the auspices, he was actually a kind of a power unto himself. Some people think he's the responsible for boring Superman of the 60s and 70s. But as the editor, under the auspices of his employment with DC, he said, well, we're gonna put gorillas on the cover. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. And he devised this Bizarro character as an employee of the company. So who owns Bizarro? Who created Bizarro? Bizarro was created by DC under the auspices of one of their employees.
Oh shit!
Everybody can get it.
It's almost like Bizarro's a corporation. Then it's like a live thing. It's like an entity.
It's the Coca-Cola. Yeah.
You're fucking with me, Dr. G. I love
yes.
We can do all kinds of Coke, but if you want to put the logo on it, and if you want our manufacturing and distribution power, sign here. So you're ahead of me now. Let's see. We went from Bizarro to the Shadow. Now here again, this is a character who was created by a guy named Gibson for Condé Nast Publications. Condé Nast is a big publisher. Licensed this. DC doesn't own the Shadow. They've been able to license him and put him with Batman. I think he's even appeared with Daredevil, hasn't he? Shadow's appeared with all kinds of people because he's a pulp character.
I don't know about that. Actually, I think I was in with the DC characters. That's actually news to me.
Now, is this?
And by the way, I've always had a theory that the Shadow it was partly influential in creating Batman. That's just a personal pet theory of mine.
Absolutely. In fact, you could say that Batman is nothing really more than a pastiche of an old movie character, radio and movie character.
Yes, yeah. This guy did not hold back on regards with criminals.
With the Joker, but the Joker was inspired by a movie called The Man Who Laughs.
Yes.
Visually. So the thing is again,
Conrad Veidt, I guess, who the actor played in the.
You tell me, going back to something Al said, is this one of the virtues of corporate ownership? Because one entity controls the Shadow, although it was created by someone else. They can license him out. And I mean, the Shadow didn't disappear in the 40s. He's still around, right? Al, you could write a Shadow comic if you wanted to.
Absolutely. Listen, Dynamite Comics or Dynamite's publishing loves dipping into the public domain.
But they've had trouble with it.
They've had trouble, yes.
So is the Shadow public domain then?
Well, no. Listen, they have a hell of characters.
Why is the Shadow not
superpowers?
Now,
excuse me.
Let's put together our money and let's do a reprint series of Shadow stories because those are in the public domain. The copyright has expired on the printed Shadow stories. But
the pulp era stuff.
But we can't put the title on it because
it's not ours.
The character.
Oh, trademark, yeah.
So what if I put it in Spanish?
He's owned.
Wow, yeah, you can go crazy trying.
We probably couldn't even write a new story because the character is owned not in copyright, the original stories, but in trademark.
But what if I change the name in Spanish and call him La Sombra?
I'll say it to you again, Al. You have the best Superman story that's never been seen. Call it Humongo Man and go for town.
And look at this guy. He shared a book.
I put this in for you, brother.
I love
Well, actually, here's a perfect example of what you're talking about. So, is Red Sonja a way to extend the copy?
Well, Red Sonja actually appeared
Right, or the ownership then?
the Robert E. Howard stories, and Robert E. Howard has an estate that still is holding because he's not been dead for 95 years. He's been dead for close. So they've been licensing while the copyright exists. They've been licensing the character. So this is just like the Shadow. Marvel does not own Conan the Barbarian.
Okay, here's actually.
Wait, listen. As a fan of Conan, let me just tell you this: because Marvel dared to put Conan into the future, the Robert E. Howard Foundation pulled the copyright right under Marvel's fucking rug and said, "Fuck you! This is not what."
That's how we got You're the Hunter of the Future.
And gave it to fucking Titan Comics. Now, Titan Comics, yo, they're up to issue 3 only. But let me tell you, this is what Conan was always supposed to be and be maintained as. Salute to Zim Zub and Titan. Fuck Marvel. And thank you, Robert E. Howard Foundation, for being mindful enough to protect that copyright. Well, they still can.
Okay, so you just brought up an issue 2.
Protect the copyright, protect the integrity of the character. So let me ask you something. What about Dark Horse's Conan?
That was beautiful, but again, the copyright ran out. I think that they
license.
Dark Horse did a wonderful fucking job with Conan, and I mean, they actually put the order of the story, you know, and you understand Conan from the very beginning, you know, through a journey, and they showed us a wonderful story. Why they took it away from Dark Horse, I don't know, to be honest.
Dark Horse might not have felt, and this is a common trope in comics. The audience might have diminished, and it was, you know, they're selling 100,000 copies, 10,000 copies, and maybe the sales weren't enough to justify the license.
Sadly, I mean, Dark Horse.
What it would cost to retain the license.
Exactly.
I have every issue of the Dark Horse run, and I think that they did a wonderful job. When they got to Marvel, and when I saw him in Savage Avengers, I was like, they're trying to fuck this up. Don't do that.
Trying to exploit it. Yeah.
Well, you're talking about fucking things up. How did L. Sprague de Camp was able to write
because the Robert E.
Conan
Howard
stories then for time and against the opposition of people? Like
two reasons. The character is in the public domain in terms of story.
Yeah.
Also, he negotiated with the Robert E. Howard estate to continue the character, but the trademark, the name of the character, is owned outright, and there's no expiration on trademarks unless, as Al pointed out, you don't use it.
Like Ablaze does the Sumerian. You know, it's a Conan book, but it's not Conan. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Isn't that weird? And this is one of those weird things about corporate ownership and perpetuating properties. And it's also the weird thing about serial fiction. I don't really have a Superman story to tell. Well, you better think of something because we're printing next week.
And Greg, you're killing me. This is, I mean, big Barry Windsor Smith cover. Look how gorgeous this is.
That is so cool, man.
I mean, that is the Conan artist, period. I don't give a shit.
I would argue that
legends, but there's no one. I mean, look, no.
John Buscema is, man. This is amazing. This is gorgeous.
You know.
I should have taken it out of the plastic. I just couldn't do it. Just like
no. It might disintegrate when it contacts air.
Beautiful. So what's next?
Oh my God! Yes, Greg is about to send me this because I want to buy this. So I need this. Look at this.
I put this in here for you, Al.
I know you did. To remind me, Al.
It is delightful, man. It is this. It's a master. It's a.
Yo, bro. I mean, Greg
has
one
of those artists. It doesn't even matter. So here again, we're now talking about characters that are licensed.
Frankenstein, baby.
Yes, sir. By who?
Bernie Wrightson, yeah.
Oh, glory! The master opus of a master illustrator. And how could he do it? How could he get away with this? Doesn't Universal Studios own Frankenstein? No. Universal Studio owns their rendition, their recognizable likeness of that flat-headed version with the bolts of Boris Karloff.
Yeah, the one with the scar and the bolts. That's theirs. But this is open. This is drawing from the original novel, which is in the public domain.
You said it, Mal. The book is in the public domain. And Al, you mentioned this before. What we call it the public commons. And we're going to talk about that in a minute too. So yeah, can you believe this stroke of genius? Swamp Thing is owned by DC, even though Bernie Wrightson helped create it. The copyright hasn't expired. They've trademarked Swamp Thing. He can't do whatever he wants with Swamp Thing. What's he going to do? Let's do Frankenstein.
Delightful. It's gorgeous. That's
and he changed the
tiny
game.
little.
That's it.
So many pencil strokes. There are pen strokes. Like it's just an intricate etching line work, man.
You know, I'm closing my screen so I can look at it on my bigger screen. You know what's amazing about that is that's all pen and ink. He's not using brushes. It's amazing.
Yes, yeah. It's a.
And
I can imagine.
I can tell you a story about Bernie Wrightson's relationship with brushes because he happened to tell me one afternoon. But you know what I never understood? Why did he sign that in pencil? I never could figure out why he signed that in pencil.
Maybe he used so much ink that he had none by the time he was done.
Well, you know what he told me one time, guys, is that he had this rash on his hands. Rest in peace. What a gent, Bernie Wrightson.
Yeah, man.
He had this rash on his hands, and he couldn't figure out what it was. You know, and it was bad. It was getting in the way of his ability to draw. And he figured out that what it was the nickel plating on the ferrule of his inking brush.
Oh, wow.
He had developed an allergy to the nickel plating on his brush.
No way.
And so once he was able to, I think he used like nail polish to shellac it so he could touch it. So here again, guys, if we'll just keep going, we're spending a lot more time than I thought, but it's interesting. Who owns Wonder Woman?
Oh, wow.
I mean, wouldn't
Not the molten
it be the doc that created him?
State, I guess.
You got to check these out, Al. I gave you some really sweet. This is the splash pages to each of 3 chapters of Wonder Woman number 34. This is a coverless copy I have, but look at the splash pages. That's the first chapter. That one's the second chapter. I think I gave you a spread after that. Check it out.
Oh my God. Look at this gorgeousness.
Oh, man.
Now talk about somebody knowing how to write the character, because he had Al didn't
exclusives, folks. You're seeing shit that you probably have never seen in your life.
It's been for decades been out of the public eye.
And here's why I wanted you to see this. Aside from the conversation about who owns it, DC is trying to retain the copyright in this material by, we're all so happy and pleased to see those archive editions, right? Even though they're badly colored and badly restored. The only purpose they serve the purpose of commerce. That's not for you and I to enjoy these original stories. That's for them to hold the copyright in the material.
Oh yeah, man. It's a sneaky
reprints. Keeping it in print, keeping it in the circulating.
My homies like Bondage owns Wonder Woman. Big shout out to Joe over there.
Hey, that's a really good observation, but I guess I have to tell you that Wonder Woman uses bondage to turn the tables on all of her oppressors.
Like, you think you tie me up, baby? I got you.
There is nothing like the original Wonder Woman, and there probably will never be again, because what company is going to deal with the subtext that Charles Moulton, who's actually the Dr. William Marston, put into Wonder Woman? He created her for that reason. Wonder Woman was created for the reason of discussing female empowerment. You're
talk about female empowerment.
Wow, look at that.
Gorgeous cover.
She's still going today. Could I not? We're looking at Bernie Wrightson, and could I not throw in some Brian Bolland? Look at that.
Yeah, Brian Bolland, legend, man.
She's still going today. Who owns the trademark in Wonder Woman?
Well, DC, right?
And remember, though, William Moulton Marston brought Wonder Woman to DC. He says, you guys have got Superman, you need a balance. So he didn't just sign her over to DC. He said, I'm going to write her until I'm done, and I'm going to get my cut of it. Now, of course, I think he might have gotten a 30% cut of it. But DC exerted their editorial control, especially after the Golden Age, and said, you're out. We're going to do something different with Wonder Woman. Why did they change the appearance of Wonder Woman in the late 60s, early 70s?
Oh, now they can claim copyright ownership of the new, improved, revamped Wonder Woman, rebooted Wonder Woman.
The distinctive likeness. The distinctive likeness. Why did they change the characters' costumes? The distinctive likeness of the character establishes or continues to hold the rights in the character. Now, they own the trademark Wonder Woman, absolutely. But all of that work we just looked at, I'm going back. You're not going back. But that stuff drawn by H.G. Peters, that would be in the public domain, except they've selected pieces of it. There are Wonder Woman stories that you can find that are in the public domain now. So who's this, guys?
Oh my God, the OG Blue Beetle, not Jaime Reyes, but the OG.
Yeah, not the current version.
Bro, are you telling me you got this book in your collection? So stop fucking around, bro. I want this if you got this.
I don't have a lot of Golden Age stuff, but I got a few. Who owns Blue Beetle?
Oh, listen. I mean, I know Blue Beetle had its history with Charlton, and then DC bought Charlton. But how the copyright works, I have no idea. And the fact that this came over from a different company.
Do you know that Blue Beetle actually there was a movie serial in the late 30s, early 40s of the Blue Beetle? There was a radio show of the Blue Beetle.
No way.
Super famous character. One of the most famous characters from Fox Features. Well, what happened to him? The Golden Age ended. People weren't going to publish him anymore. It wasn't profitable. Charlton ended up with him. DC bought Charlton, brought Dick Giordano over. So we've seen the Blue Beetle
and fucked everything up from the Charlton verse, all right?
With DC. But lots of people, didn't the Dynamite guys try to do something with Blue Beetle?
I'm not sure.
I don't know if that's one of the characters, but there are several characters that Dynamite reasonably thought was in the public domain, and they've had to fight because some of those characters are not. They're in the public domain in terms of their stories. The copyright has expired. They weren't protected. But the trademark, when DC buys a character, what are they buying? The stories? Not usually. The character? More or less. The trademark.
When we got the trademark, is there a specific look to the trademark that's being bought?
So why would they take Dan Garrett and turn him into... who's the famous Blue Beetle who died in Infinite Crisis?
Ted Kord.
Ted Kord, Booster Gold's best friend, and then turn him into Jaime Reyes. Why would they do that?
I mean, they went totally different where Jaime now understood the power of the sky. It was something that was never thought of back in the 30s to now. Like, here's the sky. What does it do? None of these people unlocked it until Jaime came around. So, but that's the story.
And nobody who created the original Blue Beetle can lay any claim to that version of the character, and they don't own the trademark.
Crazy.
DC now has complete control over Blue Beetle. Aren't they talking about making a movie now?
Making is done. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
it's done, and it kind of went away. It didn't really
but
do
I
much
blame
business.
the strike for that. I blame the strike for that because these kids were not allowed to promote the movie. I mean, Black Panther had his time to shine. Shang-Chi had his time to shine. All these other movies had his time to shine. And then here comes a Latino-facing movie.
Yeah.
Here's a strike. Oh, you know what? Let's release it during the strike anyway. So you know what? You wanted it to fail.
Yeah, nobody promoted it. You know, it's funny, Al,
They
is
wanted it to fail.
did they?
Yeah, I'm sure they did. They wanted it to fail. They didn't want to see a Latino versus America consists of two colors. That's it. Black, brown. I mean, black, white, no brown, because you can't have in between. That's how I feel about it.
Because Into the Spider-Verse was the best Spider-Man they did. I loved that.
Yeah, absolutely. But then, you know, they don't like to talk about the Hispanic side of the character. They focus too much on the skin color. And again, this is why people don't understand. And I will say it here. When Latinos talk about, you know, negro, black, I mean, we're talking about either our skin color or African Americans. We like they really do compare a difference. Like they don't want that difference. And not being racist, is like they want to separate that way. And this movie, the character of Miles Morales is both Puerto Rican and African American. And I feel that they want to dismiss the Latino side of the character all the time.
Well,
I don't like that. Stop focusing so much on the skin color. He also has another half to him. So let's focus on both sides and how well they work together. You know what I mean?
See what's under the mask, man.
Yeah, you know, and how well the two cultures and how that dynamic works so well together, you know? Because we are pretty much different, but don't know this one.
Karma of being an old white guy. But let me say something. Let me say something to you, my brother. Demographics are against the sons of bitches.
I know. You're absolutely right. It's why they cast Mexicans as Puerto Ricans all the time and not understanding we don't talk the same. But again, that's another show.
Yeah, it is. This is an online capture. I do not own All-Star Comics #3. Go one more and see what comes next. Go one more and see what's next. Go one more. I do own that. I do own that.
Oh, the treasury.
Go one more. Go one more.
Oh, wow.
Wait.
It's like the revamped version of it.
Go back 3. Go back 3. So start there. Start there. No, one more. Okay, so there it is, right? First of all, what have you got there? You've got a holding company, All American Comics, going, gee, we sure got a lot of characters created by a lot of people. Flash by Gardner Fox, Hourman by Bernard Bailey, Green Lantern by Al Nodell, Hawkman by... So what if we put them all together? Wouldn't that be a kick?
Ooh.
The first aggregate, the first supergroup ever. And was it a success? Oh, God, yeah. And how do you hold on not only to the name of the book, because we don't publish All-Star Comics anymore, and how do you hold on to the copyright in that material? Advance it one more.
Yeah, I'm just saying, though, just looking at this team, this is an unstoppable team.
Oh, God, yeah. Well, the Spectre and Dr. Fate. So we reprint it, and we do it in big format, so it's distinctively different, but we retain the copyright in it. We renew the copyright, and we sell it like hotcakes because people want to see that old book. And we wait another 30 years, and what do? Advance it one more, Al. We reprint it. Well,
here we go.
I think you skipped one. What's the one before that? Oh,
no,
the other
what you got for me? That's all.
It dropped out because I have the Millennial Edition was in there too. But yeah, look at that. Do you wish you had that in your pocket?
Fuck yeah, bro.
Yes.
Yeah.
My friends, in April of 21, which was what, 2 years ago?
Yep.
It sold for $358,000.
What?
Oh, man.
That's a house, bro.
Seriously, yes.
Oh my God.
That.
Look at the beauty of this image. Holy fuck, bro. Look at the two red
composition,
tornadoes. Holy shit, yo. That's so crazy.
Now, this is a significant image for a lot of reasons. This was originally published in Justice League 76, and they did a really nice reprinting of it in Justice League 110, which was the big fat one. But I love this image because you can see Murphy Anderson's blue line pencils. But what is this? This is the entire Justice Society of America as we knew it in the Golden Age. And it includes Batman and Superman. And the thing is when Max Gaines, the guy who started All American Funnies, left to do educational comics. He sold all of this to DC. And so instead of it being two, sort of related sister companies, All American with the Flash and Hourman and Hawkman and the Spectre and Mr. Terrific and DC, who owns Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman, they brought them all together. And this is the definitive image of that.
Yeah, and look at this version of a Robin Batman. I mean, the Earth 2 version, I don't think can be defeated. This is the version we should have been seeing. I mean, Bruce should have been dead a long time ago. This is what we should have been seeing on Earth Prime, yo. What the fuck? I mean, he looks so cool. This whole image is fire. Yo, bless.
It's amazing. This gorgeous composition.
Yeah.
The pencil, like looking at I'm just looking this over, man. It's amazing. Just
Mel,
gorgeous.
Are you getting off on like, look how Hawkman is
so man, look at that, like the contrast.
Hawkman's totally friendly with Green Lantern, has his hands on their shoulders. You can see the shadow of the Flash on Batman's cape. You've got you've got the red, the original Red Tomato kind of doing the eye on the new Red Tornado.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh! Hold on a second. Go back to the first one.
Exactly.
They replaced Red Tornado with Power Girl.
You didn't notice, did you?
I didn't. I had such a hard time trying to find a black and white version of that.
Look at that.
Yeah, they put Power Girl right.
OG had the new Red Tornado next to the.
Now I got to tell you something.
Oh yeah, and then the ink is a Power Girl. Actually,
this is what we're talking about. Now the guy who did that was Bruce McCorkindale, and that's how he owns that image, because he created that image. He doesn't own the characters, but that image is his because he added that character to it. That's his original.
Oh, wow.
Now, if you go down one more, there it is.
Oh, there
and
we
then
go.
Look, you see it again now in color, and Red Tornado's there, not Power Girl.
Yeah, because this is the original. I have an old crappy copy of JLA 110 that fell apart. And as soon as I had color Xeroxing, I took that down, color Xeroxed it, and it was on my wall for 20 years.
I mean, it's beautiful.
Those are the guys that started me. And I will say this: there's another reason to put this image here. Y'all are familiar with Watchmen,
of course.
This is the genesis of Alan Moore's idea, because this is the Minutemen.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that the image when you showed me the one with the blue pencils, that reminded me of Watchmen. The group photo of the originals versus the future guys, the protagonists of the actual series.
Good call, Mel. Absolutely.
Yeah, look at that.
So,
it got war complaints.
How do you retain the trademark in the title? You republish it. All-Star Comics. You got to use that name, or you're use it or lose it.
Lose it, yeah.
I mean, but I love that rendition of a Hawkman. I don't know. That helmet looks small.
I guess with that.
Isn't that Mike Parobeck?
Yeah, and then look at that opposing cover. Oh my God!
It's funny, Al, because Joe Kubert, started out as a teenager on Hawkman, and he used to draw that really beautiful headdress, and then eventually they turned it into that yellow mask.
Oh my God! And you look at this JLA, JSA. I mean, there goes one of my favorite characters in the JLA that got indoctrinated into the team very quickly. Firestorm.
Yeah, I love the gray-haired Superman who first appeared, drawn by Wally Wood in the revival of All-Star. Now, This is great, Mel. You were talking about mythology. There it is. But and of course now we're getting into dimensional mythography. 2 versions of Flash, 2 versions of Batman, 2 versions of Superman. But here's the question I want to ask you guys, going back to what we were talking about earlier. Remember we were talking about derivative characters.
Yes.
Who created Green Lantern?
Oh, wow. I got me there.
And now you got on the version. I mean, because you have Alan Scott, and then you got the Silver Age revival in Hal Jordan. But then you also start getting into the 70s, right? In 60s, you have different versions of Green Lantern for Earth. And all of a sudden, Earth has 4 Green Lanterns.
John
5,
Stewart.
6.
Yeah. So those are derivative characters. Now, why can they do that? Of course, they're doing that to perpetuate the character. They're also doing it to enclose their ownership of the character, because when Art Nodell created Green Lantern in 1940, he took it to DC, who was the publisher to go to, who was going to pay him money to write it, going to pay him money to draw it. All he had to do was accept the check, and the terms of the check was assignment of the copyright.
Oof.
Now the trademark. They make a Green Lantern movie?
Yes, they did. I mean, was it great? No, but they did it.
With Ryan Reynolds, yeah.
Did Art Nodell
Now
get any money from that?
No, they didn't.
Nope.
They could definitely clean poor box office for that one. We're not paying him.
Yeah, I don't. How do you mess that up, man? So yeah, just for fun, here's another group of characters. There's the Vigilante. There's some version of Green Arrow. Of course, Star Spangled Kid eventually joined the JSA. There's,
And Stripes. Wow, a Stripes.
But that's Murphy Anderson again. That's his blue line. Isn't that beautiful?
Yes, man, that looks amazing.
I mean, this episode doesn't match with the current that we know that includes Frankenstein and other characters, but it's really cool. I mean, this is them digging back to an archive of characters that are no longer used. I mean, you got Green Arrow and Speedy, bro. What the fuck?
Well, that's the funny thing about Grant Morrison. On the one hand, they revived in that wonderful Justice League of America 100 to 102. They revived these characters because you use them or lose them. And then Grant Morrison said, well, we want to keep the trademark in the title. We don't have to use the same characters. Shining Knight is kind of cool character, but, Stripesy's retired. Star Spangled Kid's gone on to other things. But let's keep the title, the trademark in the title, Seven Soldiers of Victory. Hey, Grant, you want to write that? Sure.
And give them new names.
With it? Sure, go for it. Enjoy yourself. Now you can see from the next one, and I just put this up here because bless his heart. That's the color version. The next one is Murphy Anderson. Now Murphy Anderson, I don't know if he's well remembered now, but he used to ink Kurt Swan on Superman. He designed the costume for Adam Strange. He worked on I
love Adam Strange, bro. I mean,
obviously he was the one who came up with, he worked on Zatanna when they revived Zatara. So this is a picture of him, with the characters he worked on, right?
And Adam Strange, man, he is just a reverse Superman story. That's why I really love that character, because a human lands on a different world, not really with superpowers, but human ingenuity. And it makes a difference.
Am I still there?
Hey,
so
I
wanted to do that as an homage to Murphy Anderson and make the note that he owned 0 of those characters, and he didn't create most of them. But in the next slide, you saw it, King Kirby. And you know what you can say about all of those characters?
He created them.
Yes,
he is he was just what is the word I'm trying to think of? A wellspring of ideas and inspiration.
It was Picasso, bro.
Just endless imagination. I'm bound. I would say I'm bound imagination.
That's a beautiful statement. Truly. And he was into it. He was like, well, let's come up with something, totally refreshing his imagination. And also sometimes kind of doing renditions of things he hadn't done before, or that he had done before in a new way. So just for fun, keep going out. What's the next one? Yeah, there he is.
That's it. Oh, that's so funny. He's actually drawing with his cigar and smoking a pencil.
And smoking the pencil. He looks kind of chunky in this one, though.
Talk about imagination. So go one more, Al.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Before he ever knew Stan Lee.
He was a pimp back in the day, too, from Brooklyn. That's Brooklyn represent, baby.
He was a bruiser.
He'd be like getting into fights in that suit right there, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably one reason he knew how to draw Captain America and those action figures, because he was athletic. He was a boxer.
Oh,
and there you
God,
go.
what a gorgeous
This
color.
is interesting because he created both of those characters in totally different eras.
Amazing.
Captain America and Bucky with Joe Simon in the 40s and the Hulk in the 60s.
Amazing.
And I think this is interesting because this fanzine, Friends of Old Marvel, has got this great Kirby Captain America cover. And who better to draw Captain America than his originator?
And
however,
funny is the boot though. You notice how his right boot is not.
Oh yeah, it's not painted.
But then if you look at Bucky's boot, it looks like in the shape of Captain America's boot.
How about that? Who owns Captain America?
I do. So I wish.
Disney now owns Captain America, and they will never let him go. But Marvel did not even own Captain America.
Oh
Marvel,
shit! Yo, homie, Peter Boy Commando, stop fucking around, bro.
This is just to show you the versatility and the breadth of Jack Kirby. Another Simon Jack Kirby creation. But again, this is from the 40s when he was working. See, this is the thing. Simon and Kirby were a studio.
He's drawn from like his own neighbor, from like the punk kids that he used to fight for these.
Yeah, yes, in the neighborhood. And the way they made their money.
You can see the wheels turn into the creative wheels. He's like, I'm going to take these punk asses. I'm going to put them in World War II.
I love it, right?
They're going to respond to the bombing of Pearl Harbor. So the way they made their money was by creating characters, not owning them. They created pages. Jack Kirby, legendary for being able to draw 2 or 3 pages a day, because that's how he made his money. What he didn't think about at the day, because it wasn't how the system was arranged, was owning the character. Look at this great work.
I remember reading somewhere he had like an insane contract with Marvel, like in the early part of it, where he had to draw like 22 pages in a week to as a part of his contract.
Yeah, but bro,
he had to draw a book a week. Yeah,
you guys want to talk about the artistry, but yo, can we please talk about that lettering? Look how dope the Boy Commando's lettering looks, and just the placement of all the lettering, allowing to art to flourish beautifully. You don't see this nowadays.
Even though he had no time to do it, he always tried to experiment a little bit. He always tried to do something.
Yeah, but
and his motivation was like impact. Like he wanted to keep your attention.
And this is a little bit of this is kind of what Kirby had to contend with. He could pencil a page, boom. But Joe Simon did a lot of the inking in the early days because he was finishing the pages. And that's one of the strange things about Kirby. You almost never see something that he inked himself because he never really cultivated that. He always worked with great inkers because he was slamming out pages and getting it done. And he's like, who's going to finish this? So, Al, what's that?
Bro, you're killing me.
I guess it was a combination of his, the schedule that he had, where he really couldn't get into the fine details of inking, plus his imagination. Like the guy was always trying things, always like exploding. How do I make this blow? How do I make this like pop out of the page? Like,
I'm sorry,
he was in demand. The more pages he penciled, the more he got, and he got good page rates.
Yeah,
inkers get good page rates too, but it takes longer. So he's
specialized. It's about everybody though. I mean, it's the artistry, it's the lettering, it's the inking, it's the everything. Look at this one page you got here. Look, nowadays you buy a comic book, it'll take you 10 minutes to fucking read, has no goddamn value. Look at this one page right here. This one page will take you 10 minutes to fucking read. You know what I mean? This is when comic books have value, when you can be thoroughly entertained. Look at this.
Al, you're never going to read that. You're never going to read that.
You are killing me. When I see this, I get excited.
You know why you're never going to read that comic book, Al?
Why?
Because it's young romance or young love.
Listen, I'm a single man nowadays. I need to learn how to pimp. You know what I mean?
I'm just teasing you, brother. Can you believe it? Of all the things Kirby has done, he also instigated romance comics. Can you believe it?
He literally touched every genre there is. He became best known in that superhero, but he touched everything. He did everything: war stories, romance, like hearted social edge stories about the Bowery Boys, like everything.
Yo, Mel,
I love that you said that, Mel. Because
everything. And there's also the comics he made for for movies. Like he made a comic book about 2001. He made one about Star Wars. He made one about The Prisoner. You know, the sci-fi series starring Patrick McGoohan. He made one about that. He made a comic book about that. Like the guy was an industry in itself.
I just want to say this: Jack Kirby may have been a nerd, but homie was a pimp. So if you read these books, you're gonna.
He was a nerd, but he would get down too. He would throw down, man. He would not. He was not like a pencil neck geek.
You know what I would say about that, Al? He was a professional.
Absolutely.
And Mel, I love that you said that because, you know, we think of him for Thor and Fantastic Four, but he did it all. He just ended up sticking with what was selling, and that was superheroes. So here it is in black, here it is in white. Go one more.
My theory also is that I think science fiction was a oh man, look at that.
Now that's the shit.
It is, man. That is, there's so much, like, where do you even start? There's so much punch and power and energy and like a dynamism.
I've never seen this cover. Thank you.
And I don't know.
It tells a story. One image tells a story.
Hey, Mel, tell us what you see there.
Okay, so I see Johnny trying to find a place to get into the fight there. I see Dr. Doom. That Reed Richards is all over him, literally, with all his tentacles. I see Sue has some trouble. I see Hawk on the corner trying to, I guess, help them, I think, or maybe fighting his own battle. And I see other people that I cannot identify. Actually, that's Namor. I see Namor there at the very edge, fighting the thing, I think.
Bro, Namor's in the picture. Like, yo, this is the biggest
what was that, Al?
in history. Everybody just had too many beers this night on issue 100, and everybody's having a brawl. I love it.
I can imagine that, like, they were probably daring each other. The artists were daring each other. Who can come up with the most outrageous action-packed cover? And Kirby rose up to the challenge.
Mel, you know what this is? This is Comic Crusaders versus all those fake reviewers, and we're having a bar fight. Let's go.
Oh, yeah.
Good one. I gotta say, just Mel, if you don't mind me saying, you really pointed out, there's the Hulk cornered. He's in the corner of that cover.
Can you repeat that? You broke up a little. I missed the name you mentioned.
The Hulk is cornered in that cover. Compositionally, Kirby has cornered the strong character, the Hulk. He's cornered in that cover. Sue Storm, she's looking almost directly at us. So she's almost telegraphing to us, can you believe this shit's going on? And then
I was going to say, she looked like she's in trouble. Yeah.
I mean, this is masterful composition.
Yeah, but
I remember once someone describing Kirby as consumed by imagination, and that page I would say yes, you can see that, like, he's just consumed. How do I make this awesome? How do I make it bigger? How do I make it better? How do I make it better? And just diving in with the pencil and finding a way to make it work.
How do you make it that cluttered, but you can still read it? You can still
read it. That's what I mean. Like it's the brain, the Kirby brain. Like you have to see things through the Kirby brain. It's like a unique viewpoint, exclusively his.
I've seen so many covers, and you're like, you're like, okay, what's going on here? How do I untangle this? This you see it immediately, and then you spend hours looking at it, and that's just the cover. So yeah, what do you got next, Al? There he is.
I love the idea too of like, here's Captain America, but here's all his companions, but you're seeing them on a wall, like as like almost like a missing people kind of thing, like so much cleverness in showing and giving you information.
Yeah, conceptually you see it; it's all there. Captain America is trying to call a team together, but he's obviously they're just in potential. They're not around him. He's got to find them.
Yeah, and what's crazy here though, he says Avengers assemble. But there are villains behind him. Like
it's almost like get here now. I'm surrounded.
No, it's not that. It's the fact that even Captain America understands sometimes you need to use villainy in order to promote your plan to for goodness. So he got executioner and enchantress on this list.
This is the classic Captain America pose. That's
the Scarlet Witch.
Him standing there, arms and legs akimbo with the shield.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So the next one, talk about a cluttered cover that makes perfect sense.
I love this shit.
You can see like the line dividing them. You're dividing the teams.
So who created these guys? Who created the Avengers?
Kirby.
Well, Stan Lee said, we've got all these great characters. Kirby created Ant-Man and the Wasp, created Iron Man, created Captain America, Hulk, all of these things. So let's put them all in a team. Let's put them all in a team. I got to say,
what's kind of cover? My God.
It's a great cover, is it not?
Oh, my God.
I think
Look
that's
at that, man.
With a nod to you, Mel, I think that's Buscema, isn't it? John Buscema?
I think it might be Buscema. Yeah, Buscema.
But of course, look at it. I mean, if only they had put Captain America versus Iron Man then and Hawkeye versus Thor, you would have had a prequel to Civil War back then.
Well, yeah, that's what a lot of writers do is they go back and they say, what can we glean out of these? And I just put a few pages in here just to show really the gorgeousness of these early efforts. I mean, look at that. This is the compliment to the Justice League image. So look at all these characters. Marvel did not exist until Martin Goodman said, we're going out of business. And Stan Lee said, we've got to do something. Captain Marvel was actually a property that was possessed by Timely Comics, and it was owned by Simon and Kirby. I mean, they kind of gave it to them because they were doing pages, and they walked away from Captain America after the 10th issue. So Timely kept it going. So by rights of possession, when Stan Lee was like, well, we got to think of something. The Avengers was a cool title, but what made the Avengers? Captain America.
Absolutely.
And then here you see some Marvel Mania. Look at all this exploitation. And I bet every one of the artists who drew those pictures, Herb Trimpe, they got a piece of those posters. Yeah?
I hope. I mean, look, all four for $1.50? Fuck yeah, well, that's the deal.
And they didn't even get 5 cents.
Right?
They probably didn't even
and
get
plus
paid
50 cents postage
because the image was probably drawn from the comic books. So
and
this
one
is
of my
marketing.
favorite series in fucking Marvel, bro. Oh my God.
Exploitation. How many people created how many of those characters? Chris Claremont didn't create Marvel Girl, but he created the Phoenix out of her, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Derivative character.
Oh my God, I love this cover. How dare you?
This is so cool, man. This is so
Spider-Woman is original, but she's a derivative character. She's not derivative on Peter Parker in the story, but she's derivative of Spider-Man as an icon. And why would they create Spider-Woman? So somebody else didn't grab her. Who owns Wonder Woman?
I do.
DC. Who owns Wonder Man?
Oh shit, Mr. Marvel, Disney.
How did they manage to do that?
Wonder Man. Isn't that crazy? They never thought about protecting that copyright. That's kind of idiotic.
Trademark. So if DC could have done a Spider-Woman, Marvel could have done a Batwoman. They might have had a fight on their hands. So to make sure it was protected, DC trademarked Batwoman. Revived her, right? Recently they revived her in such a glorious way. So yeah, so this is Kirby doing his thing for Marvel. I mean for DC.
For DC. Yep.
Now, Mel, you were talking about Kirby
Ooh.
being this total wonk of imagination. Can you imagine? Mr. Miracle, what a great idea. Jeez.
Based on Jim Steranko too, because I spoke to Jim. Let me tell you, my man got stories. I love that dude.
He was an escape artist and a magician, right?
Yeah, and he says that Mr. Miracle is based on him. They were talking, and when this happened,
wow,
based on him. And I'm gonna tell you that I was talking to Jim Steranko. This was at a Northeast Comic Con in Massachusetts, and I was talking for him so long I didn't realize because I was mesmerized. And when
he is a supreme storyteller.
There was 20 people behind us. I'm like, I'm so sorry. You want to talk to him? He goes, no, we're also listening. I'm like, all right, bet.
I'll tell you why I put this one up.
He is a character in himself. He is quite the character, man. He is so cool.
Do you recognize this character?
It looks like
that looks like me back in the day when I had nice hair.
It looks like a Kamandi, the boy in the past and in the wild past.
It's not.
That's exactly why I put this up here, Mel. Perfect. It looks just like Kamandi.
100.
Apparently abusing steroids too, but wow, look at those arms.
Well, it actually looks like Captain America with long hair, but it's Kazar. And so what's interesting is this is Jack Kirby again, working on something for Marvel and deciding it can't work for them. He goes, well, I can take that idea and shift it, and I have Commandy.
Commandy, yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I said, he just needed those outlets. It's almost like he had to have them. Like Marvel and DC, even though they let him do a lot of things, they were still restraining him in a lot of ways.
Mickey Mouse Magazine. Oh shit!
Why is this here?
Why are you doing this? 13 stars too. What are you doing?
I guess it takes us to the present of a company called Disney.
Yeah, exactly right. Stick on this for a minute. None of these characters were created by the same person, but they were created for the same person, so that he wasn't producing comic books, he was producing cartoons. But because he was the producer and he owned the studio, you know how to draw a dippy dog? Bring it on. I'm going to call him Goofy, and I own it.
Oh shit!
So there's a reason that I did this. Just very slowly go one more. Classic, right?
Oh.
Now, Disney did not own Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is an ageless fairy tale, right?
Okay.
Came out of the public domain. It's a story 100 or more years old. The Grimm brothers put it in a book, but Disney's like, what fits cartooning? What's kind of fanciful and fantastic? Oh my gosh, let's do Snow White. But that version of Snow White, that's theirs. They own that. And even to the point of trademarks in the characters. And you know they have trademarks in the characters because can you go buy a toy figure of Dopey and Donald Duck?
Yes.
Sure you can. That's how they hold the iconic, distinctive likeness. Now, Disney did that many times. They did it with Winnie the Pooh. They did it with Mary Poppins. They don't own those properties. Those estates still have the rights in the books, but in terms of the iconic familiar images, when I say Winnie the Pooh to you, you mostly think of Disney, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yes.
But that's a license from a copyright that actually is about to expire. The A.A. Milne estate, the estate that of the artist who wrote the Winnie the Pooh books, that copyright's about to expire, and then it becomes public domain. Now that means that you and I can write a Winnie the Pooh story, right? Because it's in the public domain now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Except for one thing. Disney owns the trademark in Winnie the Pooh by virtue of its movies. Is that crazy? So the reason
all right. This is the question here from a creative perspective. It's in public domain. Disney owns a version of it. So how can I use it without stepping on their toes?
You can write a Winnie the Pooh story, given that the copyright in the characters is expired. Theoretically, we're going to talk about this. This is exactly why I raised this. But Disney can come to you and say, well, that's a pretty nice Winnie the Pooh story, and I guess you're not infringing upon the Milne estate, but we own the trademark in the name, and we are going to send you a cease and desist letter telling you not to publish that because it erodes the value of our recognizable character. And now, are you going to fight Disney?
I mean, the only way I'll fight them if I have money, and Port of Omega don't got no money.
So this is the thing. Mel, I think you talked about this early on. We were talking about the public domain. We call that the public commons. Sherlock Holmes. Now, remember, Alan Moore did this beautifully with the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. What are all the Alec Tremaine? I mean, there's a lot of characters that, well, he did it with Lost Girls, right? He did it with Dorothy from Wizard of Oz, Alice from Wonderland, and Wendy from the Peter. All of those stories are in the public domain. Not the books, because there's different ways that they protected the copyright, but the stories are. So he created a book called Lost Girls where those three characters met. Public domain characters that he exploited. Now, he did it in a particular way that they weren't entirely recognizable. First of all, he made them adults. But Disney could come to you and say, you can't do Alice in Wonderland. We own that. We created that movie. And you can't use their version of it. But And as you'll see as we go on, you can still have access to these public domain characters. So the next one out is also Disney.
Well, and you talk about Winnie, and last year, some filmmakers in Europe, they made like a gory version of Winnie the Pooh. It was like a low budget kind of schlocky thing, but they made it.
That's great because you're anticipating where we're going with this, and that's called parody and public comment. So one more, Al.
Oh,
yes, the wellspring of the whole idea was really Mad Magazine, but the inheritor of Mad Magazine, right there.
That comic.
Robert Crumb.
The underground comics movement as begun in 1967 by Robert Crumb.
Number 0.
I guess that's also where Spain Rodriguez came from. I think he came more or less from that same group. I think also maybe oh my god, I'm drawing the creator of Cerebus. Maybe he was a few years later.
He was a few years later, Dave Sim, and that's considered the ground level comics, but the undergrounds were responding to the Comics Code Authority. You could, first of all, the corporations owned everything, including distribution. We just want to draw our comics. So our Crumb drew his comics, printed it, sold it on the streets, and it did so well that a lot of people jumped in. And the next one is where we're going to go with this notion of who owns what.
Oh shit! What the hell?
Have you ever seen that before?
Never.
No.
You've never seen this before.
Never.
Never. I never.
What the fuck?
I love it. Now this is where the
is this like making fun? Is some kind of like a racist thing towards like drug dealers, Colombian drug dealers? Because that says dope, right? Those little sacks say dope. It's like he's flying across borders with like cocaine.
I'm not sure it's particular to Colombia. It might be Mexico. It's drugs. It's they weren't thinking.
Okay, well, like something south of the border, south of the U.S. border. So
they were thinking about was illegal because for a long time you couldn't smoke marijuana in the United States. It was a federal offense. What?
Yes.
George Washington and Thomas Jefferson smoked joints, dudes. How do you fight Disney?
They live nice as large as their asses.
Stay on that one out. Stay on that one out. How do you fight Disney? Go back one out. How do you fight? Go back to the first one. How do you fight Disney, and what are the terms of engagement? So in the underground, one of the virtues of the underground is they were making comments about mainstream. You may have remembered from Mad Magazine there was a thing called Super Duper Man, which made fun of Superman and Captain Marvel. They made fun of the Lone Ranger. They made fun of everybody. So the underground said, we can do that too. And we're going to do a parody. We're going to make fun of the biggest cartoon company around. Now, can you imagine Mickey Mouse selling weed on the street?
Hell yeah. I'd buy it if it's some good shit.
I could see Crumb or Rodriguez or one of those guys doing that, actually.
Well, this happened to be Dan O'Neill and a group of artists called the Air Pirates. But Dan O'Neill was a syndicated cartoonist in San Francisco, and he said, we've got to show these people that they don't own everything, and we're going to make fun of these. But for the joke to work, go ahead and advance it one, Al. We have to make it look exactly like Disney. We have to make a parody that's so close that it makes people do a double take. And they did 2 issues of this. They called themselves the Air Pirates, and you can see instead of Dell Comics, which published Mickey Mouse, they called it Hell Comics, right? So one more, Al.
I love these covers, man.
Now this is another thing that Disney did, an old fairy tale, The Tortoise and the Hare. You guys know the story. You heard it when you were kids. They did a cartoon. And this guy Gary Halbin said, "Well, let's do that story, but let's do it in this satirical way, right?" So it's a little, it's not quite Mickey Mouse, but it's pretty funny, right?
But it's a cute. It reminds me of the guy who created Cobalt Knight, the style. I cannot remember who that is, but yes, it reminds me a little bit of that style.
Yeah, because he came out of the underground as well.
But that is, I was telling Al a while back about a character named Calimán from Mexican comics. And there are issues of Calimán fighting Dr. Doom and a separate issue fighting Hulk. So I would imagine in Mexico they just don't care about that. They just like whatever works, you know.
Is it
whatever gets people?
The artist probably doesn't work. Marvel probably doesn't see it worth their while to stop it. But if someone did that in America, they'd stop them cold, and we're going to talk about that too. So these guys are doing these. This is called satire. You know, it's parody in that it's taking a distinguishable character and putting it in a weird context, like Mickey Mouse selling weed, but it's intended as satire. And I'm going to tell you a story now. Disney saw these 3 comic books and they sued these stoner San Francisco comic books, and they won in court for $4 million in 1970.
These guys would never smoke again. I feel so bad for them.
Well, this is the thing. So we're talking about creators' rights. Dan O'Neill said, we have every right to parody you and do a satire of you, and the satire works best if it looks close enough. The judge said, no, it's too close. Now, Dan O'Neill said, no one's going to look at this and actually think this is a Disney comic. They're going to know that we're making fun of it. And the judge said, no, that's Mickey Mouse, recognizably Mickey Mouse,
What?
and you lose.
Oh,
How did they get – these are underground cartoonists. You know, they've got maybe enough money to smoke some weed. How did they get out of paying Disney $4 million in 1970?
I know, yeah.
They called up all of their cartoonist friends and they said, here's what we're going to do. Every chance you get, do some kind of a messed up but distinguishable version of Mickey Mouse, and we will launch Mickey Mouse into the public domain. Everybody will draw a picture of Mickey Mouse in every context, on a wall, in a comic, on an ad, until Disney can't enforce it. Disney can't go after everybody, and what they will have is a character that they no longer control. Public domain.
That's pretty clever. Wow, they really thought it through. How to just gradually, with each illustration, kind of take the character away from Disney.
Well, the reason this worked is because Disney went to them. First of all, these comics are rare because Disney required them to be destroyed. And then Disney said, listen, Disney said to them, stop. They called it the Mouse Liberation Front. Stop. And we'll forgive
MLF, MLF.
Seriously, yeah, it's like a form of terrorism, but it's a clever one.
Do you see it in the lower left corner of the Air Pirates book there? MLF.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Let me tell you something about this. Mickey Mouse used to appear in newspapers, and the trademark in the character exists to this day. Both his visual aspect, which has changed, which was a way to continue owning it, but also the trademark in the name. Mickey Mouse is a trademarked name. So you think they evolved Mickey Mouse to make him look better? They evolved Mickey Mouse to hold on to it. So then, but the comic strips that appeared in the 30s are no longer under copyright. They weren't reprinted. They were never collected anywhere. The copyright in them expired. And this company, Eternity Comics, said, awesome. We can't use the name, but we can reprint the comic strips. And they came out with this book called The Uncensored Mouse. And if you open that comic book, what are you looking at? The first newspaper appearances of Mickey Mouse when he was a rough and tumble street fighter and a little bit of a racist. And Disney got wind of this comic book because it was published in LA, and they stopped them cold. They published 2 issues of it, and Disney said, you're done, or you can pay us $8 million.
And everybody knows, we're going to stop at a 2.5-hour mark because I know this would be crazy. But I got to ask here. This is killing me. I love Captain Crunch.
Okay. Well, see, once again, and I know we have to stop. Maybe we should pick it up from here, but this is my point. The reason I went through these old books is to show how the system worked and how people would create these things they didn't control, and then how they would try to grab control. And one of the ways to grab control of a recognizable image is to parody it. Captain Crud. And this is when things opened up, because that looks like Captain Crunch.
100.
But it isn't Captain Crunch.
I mean, listen. The only difference is that the motherfucker
just enough to not be 100% Captain Crunch.
And he has no teeth from the sugar. But it's also a comment. It's a comment.
It's cavities. He got cavities.
It's a comment
saying, yeah, this is bad for your kids. Yeah, this is loaded with sugar. You shouldn't give it to your kids.
And the kids are looking at it and they're laughing their asses off.
Oh, man.
So this is something that's coming out. Now, this is different.
Oh.
You can make the argument that this is a parody. What satirical purpose does it serve? It's just playing off the imagery. Both DC and Marvel could go to these guys and say, stop now. You are acquiring the distinctive likenesses of our characters.
Yeah.
However, somewhere on the internet, I found this. They're just making hay. Do one more, Al.
Yo, this is hot, though. Fuck.
Oh, it's great, isn't it?
Oh, my. I mean, my imagination right now is blowing up with the possibility of a story like this.
Now, yeah. Now look at this.
Oh my God!
Do you recognize that cover, Al?
It looks familiar.
It is a dead ass steal. A dead ass steal of a DC limited collector's edition from I think 75. And this is the difference. This isn't satire. This isn't really parody. It's dead appropriation. So this is plagiarism.
Okay. Why do
it's
you
awesome though. It's so cool.
Awesome. That's why they stole it, Mel.
I would say they improved it. Actually, they made it better. They actually didn't just take it. They improved it, man. They made it. They actually took it seriously. They really took it to another. Like they upped the notch on the.
And they in today's climate, they'd probably call it an homage, and more power to them because it is beautifully rendered. But they didn't really even alter it. What they basically did is they did a dead on steel, and they just changed the names and the faces. So I mean, that's not Batman, but that's a dead rip of the original.
But it's beautiful though.
Fuck, it crosses the line from parody to appropriation, so it's actionable. Now I'm putting this in here because here we are with Bernie Wrightson again. You remember this character from the Heavy Metal movie?
Actually, a little bit.
Not really, no.
You know what? He got that Joe Swanson chin, bro. Let's go.
Yeah. He licensed this character to the Heavy Metal movie. That's why you know for 20 years you couldn't see the Heavy Metal movie because all of the licenses were all up in the air. But Bernie Wrightson got exposure in the movie and he retained the rights in the character. And when we were at Tundra, we published a Captain Stern series. Fantastic.
Tundra. Talk about Tundra just a little bit because folks may not know about your particular history and one of those amazing independent publishing presses from back in the day.
I will tell you that story if you advance it one.
A tease. Hey, there you go.
Main character.
Which one of you guys is Stern? All right. Captain
Stern or Dr. Stern, Mr. Monster, who is another thing we published at Tundra. So, okay, very good. How fun is that? These are two creators putting their creator-owned characters together just to have a good time. And that was the cover to Amazing Heroes. So advance it one more.
Dope.
Here we go to the 90s now.
The greatest success of a creator-owned series
ever
in our time.
You know what, Greg? Let me share with you my experience. I was a kid in junior high school when this movie came out. And let me tell you, I did not get to experience it in the theater. However, the majority of my classmates did. And that Monday, after that, tell you that my fucking junior high school was just nuts about the fucking Turtles. I mean, from comic book geeks to kids that never, ever talked about comics in their effing life with us were approaching us like, yo, is that how the comics are? We became cool that fucking summer because of this movie.
And the reason, we should have broken this into two parts because this is really the hinge of the whole thing.
Oh, we are. This will be a two-parter. You're gonna join us next Sunday, and if Mel is ready, we're gonna come back. We got 15
I'd
more
love
minutes.
to come back. This is fascinating stuff, man.
We'll start
This is
with
amazing.
this cover because so here's the teaser, folks out there watching this. The Turtles were possible because of a change in the industry, and the change was twofold. We had a new means of distribution, which meant that a lot of people could produce things for that means of distribution on their own.
Wait. What was it though? When you talk about means of distribution at that time, what was it specifically that they recognized that had a chance to do?
All right. So let's go back to the Air Pirates and Zap for one moment. They weren't selling those on the newsstand. They weren't selling them in pharmacies. When I was a kid, you would go to a pharmacy and try to find comic books off a rack, or you'd go to a newsstand. Spinner rack.
That don't exist anymore.
That's how I found Dave Sims' Cerebus, Mel. It was behind the counter with the Penthouse magazines, and I'm like, how do I ask him for Cerebus and not have him tell me I can't have it because I'm not allowed to buy Penthouse? I don't want Penthouse. I want Cerebus.
Oh wow, that is.
I love it. Greg ignored the titties and went straight for the comics.
Right.
Don't tell anybody listening, but I had that stuff covered, you know. But Cerebus, what the hell was that? You'd never seen a comic book like that, and that's my point. When the underground comics revealed that if you could find another place to sell the book, and they sold them through head shops, right? I need a pipe. What the hell is Zap Comics? Oh, you got to take what's the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers? Here's the pipe. You got the weed. Do yourself a favor, take the comic book.
Yo, bro, I want to high five you right now. The Fabulous Freak Brothers even came out on animation, you know, as an homage to the comics. Yo, bro, what a wonderful homage to the OG comics and storytelling and animation. The Fabulous Freak Brothers, again, not an American-made book. I mean, fucking dope for people that don't know. Like, listen, comic books is worldwide. Like, yo, you got stuff here, but internationally, you got shit that will blow your fucking mind, bro.
Yeah.
You know, Al, I'm not going to spend a single minute on it, but you have to ask me about the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers, because I will tell you a story, and you are going to fall out of your chair. But that said, so the Turtles,
part two.
Yeah. So to finish the tease for the next one, the Turtles are the nexus, because the Comics Code Authority started to soften, and we found a new means of distribution, which was the dedicated comic book shop served by dedicated comic book distributors. And it opened up everything. The second company I worked for, Eclipse, is arguably the first publisher of an original, not a collected, graphic novel that was drawn specifically for the comic book market. And that was Sable. By Don McGregor and Billy. So the Turtles responded to that. We have an opportunity here. If we can create, and they love, you know, Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman, they love to draw. They were goofing around one night. I think they were eating pizza. They might have been stoned. I'm not saying they were. And Kevin sketched out this weird little turtle ninja, and Peter said, that's it. And then they came up with an origin. And we need to talk about that because the Turtles appropriated the origin of Daredevil, as you know, to create their story. But they drew the whole thing, bless their hearts. They sat down and drew it. They got some money together. There's another story for you. They printed it. They didn't know what they were going to get. And what they got was they sold out the first, sold out the second, sold out the third, sold out the fourth, sold out the fifth.
Jesus.
Before they even did the second issue.
Dr. G, I have the honor of owning an original first print. I forget which one I have, number 2 or number 3, but original first print. And since I need a car, I'm going to be selling stuff, folks. And I'm considering selling my Spawn collection, and it's amazing. That would buy me a very nice car, folks. So let's go.
Now we are full circle, because at the top of this 2 hours, Al said, don't. Now, God bless the dealers who make them available to us. I recently let go of all of my Teenage Mutant, except for a few pieces.
Oh my
of
God.
my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff that went all the way to the beginning. And I found a private dealer who was a huge Turtle fan, and we made a sweet deal. He was totally happy. I was totally happy. That's the way to do it.
All right. So before we go, Dr. G, because we're going to continue this next Sunday, because this is a very interesting conversation. Like we're seeing, so we're going to stop here at the Turtles, the beginning of a different revolution in creators now, because now
and the necessary revolution for where we're headed, which is creators' rights.
Yes.
I was going to say, are we at another nexus, like the same thing that happened in the early 90s then? Is we're seeing, and it's all connected to like the guild, the movie industry, print media, digital media?
I think so.
Yeah, and we spent a lot of time going over how the comics industry started, because those forces are still in control. I mean, Disney just bought Marvel. That's the same. They just appropriated all of that material. Yep. The Turtles, they kept it. And of course now the Turtles. So we're just a few slides away, but next time we will talk about the Northampton Summit of 1988. Kevin Eastman, Dave Sim, Scott McCloud, Steve Bissett, and we will talk about creators' rights, and then we'll talk about Image Comics and what came from there.
Scott McCloud talks about that in Understanding Comics. I remember reading that and kind of dismissing it, but it came back when you mentioned it now. It's like that was like a big issue there. Yeah, wow.
It is the issue because, listen, by all means,
what is that?
Jack Kirby knew what he was doing, and he let that stuff go. All he wanted was his original pages. But can you imagine if he had been able to retain the rights to Iron Man or the Fantastic Four?
It's unfortunate. In the industry,
not the rights to a portion of an interest in. Let's call it 10%.
10%, yeah, like which was fine for Bob Kane, but it's unfortunate in the industry as it has been up until now. You either become an example or you become the warning story, and Kirby unfortunately became the warning story.
Yes,
of Kirby, the creators' rights.
Well, I think Siegel and Shuster, because oh my God, Superman is the biggest icon ever. But I will just say, Al, thank you so much for this conversation. I'm loving it, and I'll go back to what we said at the beginning. The interest here is what's going on with intellectual property in the corporate culture. How do we give it up and how do we keep it? And it's crucial. And we're going to get into some points that will really help creators go, oh my God, is that what they're doing? Because everyone wants to own your intellectual property. And if you want to give it up to them, go right ahead. Maybe they'll give you a good paycheck. But if you can find a way to hold an interest, or I would even say the means of production yourself, because we live in a golden age of putting things out there.
When we get together, I'm going to go a little bit into what I'm doing, because these are things, it's funny, I'm actually thinking about these things, and you bring it up now, and these are things that are circling my head right now, but we'll go about it next time.
And also, you guys can email me through Al, or you can email me directly, comics for sale.
Listen, he has a hell of a collection, folks. I mean, Dr. G got some stuff. Don't ask for any of the Conan. I will wrestle you for those folks in person. I mean, I will be at New York Comic Con. If there's a ring there, I will wrestle you for Dr. G's Conan books. But other than that, let me just say a big shout out to Dr. G. We're going to continue this conversation because this is a very important conversation. We at Comic Crusaders believe in crusading, if you will, for creator rights, and at least keeping you appraised and knowledgeable. So hopefully you can make good decisions on your IP going forward. Again, this is just us talking. You know, again, we're not lawyers, we're not anything, but we're just sharing our experience with you, and hopefully that can help you determine a good decision. You know, Dr. G, bro, you are the man. We're gonna continue this. I have this saved because you sent me. Listen, Chris Buse, Dr. G killed you on the size of a presentation.
On the size, yeah.
Yeah, you know, but not even that. Just it's amazing content, amazing conversation. There's a lot to learn because listen, Comic Crusaders is here to help you guys as well. So as much as I learn, the brand learns, the more we learn to help you. And this is why we wanted to include Mel. Mel, thank you so much because you are an independent creator yourself. And thank you for your insightfulness and wonderful questions. And Dr. G for the amazing presentation.
And the Al Mega for fantastic moderation. And there you are, Al. You're the man.
Thank you for inviting me. No, this was amazing. This is, I want more. I want to come back, but this is fascinating. And it's like a rabbit hole. It's like a...
We're going to do more. This is what this is about. This is about independent comic creators. This is about comic books. This is about real people that are trying to share their stories. And I'm happy. I'm very happy and honored to have like Dr. G, Mel, and listen, this is open to creators. Please let me know if you want to join. If you want to join in the conversation, if you want to talk about this and share your experience in your journey, we're here for you. Hit me up, DM us anywhere on social media. We're going to be here again next week, next Sunday, to talk about this awesome stuff. We're going to continue the journey here and hope again that you gain value from this. With that, I'm Al Mega, Dr. G, and the guest creator, Mr. Mel Cartagena.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to meet you, Dr. G.
Happy to see you, Mel.
Mel, where can we check you out?
Yeah.
Okay, so right now you can follow me on Twitter at Robopulp, and I have a Facebook, Mel Cartagena. I'm not really there very often. Twitter is your best bet. I have an Instagram also, Robopulp as well, but Twitter is where I'm at the most. I practically live there.
But
may I also say that's the ticket, Mel. If you would like to reach me personally, Shazam Zimzow on Twitter. X.
Shazam Zimzow?
Shazam Zimzow.
Zimzow Papa. Wepa, because Dr. G is bringing it to you. Let me tell you again, thank you, bro. I appreciate your knowledge. And with that, Al Mega, this is Comic Crusaders After Dark premiere episode. We will share the schedule. This will be going a lot later next time because we're going to get into more adult talk. Get your drinks, get your blunts, whatever it is that you need. But I want you guys to engage, ask questions, and let's talk because this show is for you, the independent creator. And with that, hasta la próxima, baby. ¡Huepa!